Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Out of Our League. We have a wonderful guest for you. A sequel guest? Like, this is the first kind of sequel guest we've ever had on. Someone that's connected to something that we've had somebody else on from before. But we'll talk about that in just a moment. Gage, how are you today?
I am lovely.
Are you drinking chocolate milk?
Yes.
I don't know if the show people know about the chocolate milk joke. So,
It's not really much of a joke. It's just the fact that I just drink chocolate milk on occasion, and that's just kind of become a thing.
I mean, I feel like a lot of people occasionally drink chocolate milk.
Yeah.
But our friend of the show, Hoodie Peaks, the Penny Marbles, has kind of turned it into a joke about he'll ask you instead of how you are, he'll like, how's your chocolate milk today?
Yeah, pretty much.
So
How is it today?
It's chocolatey. Very chocolatey.
Nice.
Don't go by the instructions. Never go by the instructions. Someone's put 2 teaspoons of, Nesquik or Ovaltine. It's like, no. You do 5. And you do like mountains. You don't just like little, you just make a mountain, you dump it in there, and you pour your milk, and then as you're stirring it, you also put in some chocolate syrup. So you've got the actual powdered chocolate milk, and then you got the chocolate syrup. Oh, it's so good.
Good strategy.
Yeah.
I like it.
Diabetes in the cup. I love it.
So all you wonderful listeners who check out this show, ask your friend, how's your chocolate milk today? Anyway, Freddie, how do you pronounce your last name? Is it Nuti?
I was it's Nuti. So yeah, you actually nailed it. I was thinking it was like it's not the old tea, it's the new tea.
Ah, that's great.
So bad, it's so good. That's the best way to describe it. I was like, all right, I have to figure out how to like tell people how to pronounce my name, and that's what I stuck
wonderful. So Freddie, you have been part of a bunch of different stuff, but the way I was introduced to you is a wonderful horror podcast called Nightlight. So
Yes.
for those who may not know who you are or what you've done or anything like that, if you could sum up Freddie in, a paragraph, who would that be?
I can even sum it up in one word: movies. Big cinephile. I mean, I always grew up watching movies. It was a big part of my childhood. It's a big part of like how I live life. It's really weird. Movies have had a huge influence in my life and how I deal with things personally, outside of the podcast and stuff like that. But yeah, no, and then you were talking about like you had Prince on the show, which was awesome. It was a great episode. I loved hearing what he had to say and stuff like that too. But yeah, Prince came up to me. We worked together at a time at this retail store. He came up with an idea with Good Night Life, which was like a website at the time where we were like writing some like maybe like quick reviews or like movie related blog stuff. And then it developed into a podcast. So we had the Goodnight podcast, and then we moved into Goodnight Movie Club, which I was a part of with 2 other people that we also worked with. And then that led to him saying like, hey, you love movies. I love horror movies. You have a good aspect of like how movies are made. I would like to have you be a part of this new podcast idea called Nightlight. And I was like, at the time, not a huge horror fan, but I started watching more horror films during that time period. So I was like, yeah, perfect. Sounds good to me. Dive into a genre I don't know too much about. And we did this thing, and I don't know if, I don't remember if Prince talked about it, where me, David, and Prince all met up together. We watched 13 Ghosts, and our trial episode was ranking all 13 ghosts. And then we loved it so much that we're like, we should continue doing this. And then it became a better podcast where we did scene by scene analysis. And then we got picked up by Bloody Disgusting, which opened up a lot of different doors for me, even as like non-horror related, going into like film festival coverage, doing movie reviews on my own website, and now hopefully working on 2 short films in the near future as well. So diving into that like filmmaking world, which scares the shit out of me, but I'm down for it. I have to try at least once. But yeah, if something relates back to me, as in one word, like I said, movies. Movies.
That's awesome. So, Did you ever go to school for like cinema, or did you have any kind of background in film besides just having a deep love for movies?
No, I wish I went to school for filmmaking. Now that I know what my main passion is, I always want to, but I always like self-teach myself. The big thing that broke the mold for me of knowing exactly what my passion was the movie Hugo, a Martin Scorsese film that came out in 2010, where it's kind of like a love letter to cinema and how he made movies. And I just fell in love with the process of how movies are made and how impactful they can be to a person, right? And how influential it could be. And just seeing movie magic happen, making the impossible possible via a screen, making dreams come true in reality, and being able to see it come to life and stuff like that. So that movie holds a lot of value to me. I think it's always going to be in my top like 5 or 10. And yeah, that's where like I really knew. And then I've always made like short films with like movie vlogs with like vacations and stuff like that, but nothing too serious or anything like that. I just wrote my first script for the first time 2 years ago. And that's super hard, and I hate writing. But at the same time, I love telling stories that could have a positive impact on someone too. And that's where like I want to go in the future is telling a very important story that could affect someone in a positive way. So that's my main goal.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So now you say you don't like writing and you just finished your first script. So my question is, first I'll start with this kind of a quote that somebody said once, and that's that when you're writing, it generally doesn't come together the first time. You have to
Mhm.
keep writing until it looks like you meant to write it that way.
I love that. It's very
and
true. I can,
and
yeah.
I love that because it implies that the important part is getting everything down on paper, getting your
Mhm.
story out there to the point where you have a start, you have a middle, and you have an end. And
Right.
then from that process, it's refining it until it looks like you actually meant to write it as a good story.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's tough writing stuff out. Script format is completely different from any type of writing projects I've ever done in the past too. Of making sure it's like, oh, here's the start of the scene. This is the character. This is a voiceover. This is this. I'm like, damn, there's a lot of complexity to writing a script. And it's funny enough, where it's like now I've been writing for 3+ years of like movie reviews on my website. So I write a lot. I just don't like to write, but I love talking about movies. So that's why the podcast is perfect because it's all like vocals and I can just have a communicative like process towards it rather than like writing it out. But you kind of have to do both to like be within the industry and quote unquote. But no, I totally agree with that quote.
So to ask the question then, how many times did you rewrite the script before you felt you were comfortable with where it was at?
Oh, I'm still not comfortable where it's at. Um, and I think that's like the ongoing like creative process is like, but to answer your question, I've probably rewritten it maybe close to 10 times. And the main reason why I actually did this project was I don't know if you're familiar with the application Clubhouse, but
Mm,
Clubhouse is kind of like an app where you can go on there and it's kind of like a open forum chat, but it's all vocal. So you can like take turns with the microphone and talk about stuff. And there's a big horror community on there. And there's this guy, a producer named Jed Shepard, who made the movie Host back in 2020.
mhm.
And he would host all of these like open forums, talk about filmmaking, how to start filmmaking. And that's actually my learning process of how to become a filmmaker. I've learned a lot from Clubhouse and through him, and met a lot of great connections that way too with other producers. And they had like templates, they had like pre-done notes, like, hey, this is the starting process of how to make a movie. I was like, oh my god, this is really awesome. It's like a cheat sheet. And I'm also talking to people who make great content, great movies. And I'll talk a little bit about Host later, but I love Host, and that made a very big impact in my life too. But no, yeah, it's one of those things where they had a contest to have a anthology movie to be made by indie filmmakers. And they had a contest where like over 100 screenwriters wrote in the script, and they picked like 50 people, then 25, then the top 10, and ended up with I think like 5 people to make the anthology. And that anthology is about to be released very soon this year, which is great. But that's how I ended up writing my first script, and I've never written a script before, and I made it to the first round, but not the second. So that's when I was like, all right, cool, rewrite. But this is also a story I really want to tell. But yeah, I'm still not happy with it yet. But maybe soon.
That's awesome. And I think this kind of is a running theme in these interviews. Every single person we talk to seems to have a very consistent, you have to start doing the thing. You have to start doing it. You can't keep
Yes.
thinking about it. You can't keep wanting to do it. You can go to school for it, and that's not a bad thing. But at the same time, you really just have to start doing the thing that you want to do. Otherwise, it's going to stay there as an idea in your head, and it's not going to
Absolutely.
be made down on paper.
The
So,
hardest part is starting. Once you
yep.
start, it's hard to stop. It gets addicting. I'm addicted to work. And I work a full-time job like that pays the bills and pays the rent and stuff like that too. But I take all of these other side projects, the podcast, the writing, film coverage, doing interviews with other guests and stuff like that very seriously. And it's like a second time or a second full-time job. And I love doing it. And I have this quote I say, and it's so simplistic: do what you love and do it a lot. It's very simple, but it's everything. Once you start doing the thing that you're very passionate about, there is no looking back. I can't think of anything else besides my passion. Even when I'm at my like main job, I'm thinking about like all the other things I have to do outside of that main job, which is always funny. But it's something like you have to work towards. I totally
So
agree with that.
that leads me to a community question from, I'm gonna pronounce this Crom. It's C space H space R
Oh yeah,
space O
Haley.
space M, and it's at Jackie Torrance on Twitter. And they ask, "Yay, Freddie! What keeps you motivated?"
What keeps me motivated? I think it's just doing cool stuff with like amazing people. I think specifically in the horror community, there are a ton of amazing individuals, really great creatives, really empowering people that inspire me. And I think your inner circle makes a lot of sense too, where I have a lot of supportive friends. I have a really amazing friend group and I love them to death and they support me and I support their endeavors and they're doing their creative thing and I'm doing my creative thing. And that's the thing that motivates me the most. It's like, cool, we're all a group of people going after what we love to do. And I think that motivation makes me keep going and going and going. It's the sleepless nights. It's the days where like, oh, I have a day off and I'm sleeping 4 hours in the middle of the day because it's burnout day. My body's like, hey, fuck you. You wasted all this energy like doing too much. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. But at the same time, it's worth it. And then the nice thing as of late, which I've been very lucky for, is I get to see the results. I see progress. I see movement actually happening. And that helps motivate me as well. Where it's like, cool, this is working towards something I want to do. And that's the main goal. My main goal is to transition from my main job to my passion job. But how do I get there? And that also motivates me too. There's always has to be like a checklist or a goal list. Even small goals make a big difference. And I'm a big believer of like, if you make yourself 1% better each day, you're 365% better each year. And it's a small thing, but at the same time, it makes moves. And I think that's what helps me motivate too. And just talking to people within the same industry too. It's just, you have to be inspired by the people around you. I think that's what helps motivate me the most.
So what you're saying is if you're in a toxic environment, you may want to think about a way you can get out of that toxic environment and surround you by a much better one.
Yeah. It's you are the company you keep, for sure. I'm a big believer in that. At the
That's
same time, it's
awesome.
like, yeah, it's like there's so many amazing people out there. It's crazy. And it makes me happy to meet all of these people. And it helps. Yeah, it helps motivate yourself. And yeah, if you're in a toxic environment, you become toxic. I, that sounds a
Or
little
you
harsh,
get
but
dragged down
yeah,
into the
right.
toxicity.
It's harder. You're fighting against the waves rather than going with the flow in the current.
That's awesome. So to
Yeah.
flip this just a little bit, I want to throw another community question out there. Usually we save them till later in the show, but I really like this one. It's from Nightlight, a horror podcast, at nightlight_pod, POD. Why are you so good to us?
Oh man, why are they so good at me? Like I said, it's all about the company you keep, right? I love the dynamic that we have on our podcast. Prince is an amazing human being. He's the kindest, sweetest, hardworking person I've ever met in my life. Of course, he's like one of my best friends. Big support when I'm in like a bad emotional state. He's always there for me. He's such a great friend. He's such a great person in general. And like I said, he's very hardworking. And just to see his work ethic and how far he's come and all the cool stuff that he's doing, like we were talking about before the show, is like he's doing a bunch of cool shit right now this weekend and doing a bunch of other cool stuff in the near future that I'm really excited to see him be a part of. And David has such a great insight to all these horror films because for him, a lot of these horror films is the first time watch for him because he's known in our podcast, quote unquote, the horror virgin, right? So he's still new to the horror genre, but now I feel like he's becoming a horror expert because we've been doing this for the last 3 years. And that blows my mind too. We've been doing this for 3 years and it still feels very organic, easy, and great communication between all three of us. And besides that, we have other people on the sidelines too, like the Silent Night, where you don't hear too much about him, but sometimes he's in the studio and we get to see him play the movie for us, gives us some insights on the movie itself. We have the Nightmare, which is Bella, who's our videographer, who she also helps out with a lot of stuff as well. No, Nightlight is amazing. So them asking, "Oh, why are we so good?" Or "Why are you so good to us?" Now, why are you guys so good to me? Because it's all a partnership. It's all collaborative effort. We're good to each other. So yeah, that's a solid question.
So you said that Nightlight getting picked up by Bloody Disgusting opened a lot of doors for you. We
Yeah.
know the story of how that happened, thanks to Prince. Prince went through the whole thing and how that happened. So please check out that episode for that story. But what would you say is the coolest thing or the biggest thing that kind of brought to you?
Um, I feel like it's weird because it's not to get like emotional, but it's like finding a home in a way with the community, with the horror community. Like I said, there's a lot of great people within this community, and they're like the kindest people I've ever met in my whole entire life. And going on different podcasts like such as this and just having conversations about the same type of passion and being like, you're my people. You love the same shit that I love. And then this is how we like create like really lasting relationships and stuff like that. Like I can easily go to Canada and meet one of my friends that I met on Twitter and we can like hang out. And it's like one of those things was like, I never knew I could make these connections via like a social media app such as Twitter, which like Bloody Disgusting kind of like opened those doors of like, look at all these people that we have within our community and the horror community at large. And film festivals. Film festivals has always been a bucket list item. I've always wanted to go to a film festival, and I went to my first in-person film festival this year at South by Southwest. And let alone, I wanted to go as like a fan. I didn't want to go as like press, but I went as press and I had like my company's name on the red carpet while I was taking photos with my iPhone of like the talent. And there's people next to me like Netflix and the guy from Getty Images, where you see like that watermark Getty right next to me too. And they have like these expensive cameras, and I have a little bit of like, damn, should I even belong here? You get that little imposter syndrome, but you're like, no, I worked for this. I earned this. And just being on the red carpet as press at a film festival, being there for the first time, it's just a mind-blowing experience. And that would have not happened if it wasn't for Bloody Disgusting too, because they allowed me to start off with doing the virtual stuff because of course the pandemic with was it Salem? I forget what it was. It's like the Salem Film Festival was the very first film festival I've ever done. So it was all like with the horror genre, and then I started doing interviews, and I got to meet really cool people doing interviews for people, talking to great PR people. Some PR people are like the nicest people as well. I got to talk to Barbara Crampton, which was crazy. There's some cool stuff lined up for me this week as well, which I'll share later. But yeah, no, Bloody Disgusting feels like a family too. I love everyone who's part of that network too. Everyone from like Creepy to the Bloody Disgusting podcast. Everyone's been so kind and sweet. Horror queers, like yeah, we're a little family in Bloody Disgusting. So shout out to them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, not love
Er,
them to death.
Earlier, you mentioned that you write reviews for a website.
Yes.
What about that? How did that
So
start?
it's funny. I've always been on and off with it. Even in high school, I used to write like movie reviews just for fun. Um, about 3 years ago, I started a company called Choice Cut Media. So choicecutmedia.com is something I run. It's just, for me, it's still more of a personal thing where I just like write reviews when I can. It's hard with like time wise, but I just hired on a other writer right now too, and he's been killing it. He's been writing more reviews than me, so I'm like, this is your website now. You can take it. But that's also allowed me a lot for like the film reviews and like doing media stuff with press, with film festivals. But it's always been something to take my thoughts out of what like a movie meant to me and put it on like paper. Like even though I don't like writing, I have to like put it out somehow and like creates content and stuff like that too, which is great. And people do appreciate it, which I appreciate them appreciating it. So it's like back and forth. It's just like sharing the love of cinema for me. It's a nice like outlet for me just to put something out there, and it turned into something bigger than I thought it could be, which was awesome.
That's great. Now, that new hire, not to take away, this interview is all about you, but that might be one Demetrius,
Yes,
correct?
yeah, Demetrius is awesome. I fucking love him. He's a great dude.
That's
And
awesome.
like I
And
said, he's killing it too. He's like he was like, "Oh, are you gonna watch this movie this week?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "All right, I'm gonna watch it and I'll give you the review." And he gives me the review like 20 minutes after the movie's done. I'm like, "How do you write this fast?" Like, I want this skill. Yeah,
that's
no, he's been
awesome.
doing a great job.
Yeah, I've been absolutely loving it. Every single time I see him post something, I'm like, I'm either like, oh, I want to wait, I want to go in on that cold, so I'm gonna not read this review yet, or I see it, and I'm like, oh, what's this movie? And then I read his review, and I'm like, wow, now I really want to see that.
Right.
So it's been a lot of fun checking out all the stuff that
Hey,
he's been writing over there.
he's been killing it where like he would give like disclaimers like, "Oh, this will spoil a little bit. Try to go in blind so like you can watch the movie and then come back for the review." No, he's doing it like the right way, which is like cool.
And then you said you hired him on.
Yes.
What does that entail?
So not much because I don't know what I'm doing. So it's funny because like he'll ask me for like direction. And I'm just like I don't even know how to like tell people what to do. I'm very like not like I don't know. It's hard to explain, but like I don't see myself as like any like type of boss or anything like that, or like any type of like hierarchy or anything. It's like there's just a partnership. It's like if you write reviews when you can, I'm not going to tell you when to write it or anything like that too. And the disclaimer, he's doing this completely for free right now too. He's just doing this for like writer's credit and stuff like that. And I'm just like, one day I'm going to pay. And he's like, don't worry about it right now. I'm just doing what I love. I'm like, thanks, man. Like that's cool. Like it's just like a cool partnership, at least for like right now, and see what we can do later. But he wants to also grow within, and he wants to do like film festival coverage. I'm like, yeah, let's get you in. Let's start doing stuff. But yeah, it's like any way I can help him, I'm always down for because he always helps me too, even like on the mental health side of things as well, which is like great. And I think that's very important too. It's just like those meaningful connections, and he seems like a really good dude. And I haven't met him in person yet, but I'm definitely gonna probably do that sometime this year or hopefully in the near future.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So right now it's all just a passion project, but is there a goal in furthering it? Like if you got some sort of, ad sponsorship, or if the site, was picked up by somebody and they were like, "Hey, we want you to be part of our network," or whatever. Is that like a
Yeah.
goal you have for it, or is it literally just something you're trying to get experience for other things later down the line?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think the thing that helps its growth the most is the film festival coverage because then it's like exclusive content, so more people will come in. Um, but like I said, I don't know too much about running a website more than just uploading content. So
Sure.
but I do want it to grow for sure. I do want it to expand. There was a point where I was trying to hire on 10 writers and 2 editors, and we had like a monthly goal, and then like life happened and then something like went wrong and I had to like pay a bunch of like bills and stuff like that. So that's still a work in progress too. So I want to get in a good financial spot where I can actually hire and pay people for like actual articles and actually get editors as well so they can edit everything. But I do want it to grow for sure. I just, yeah,
So what
to
you're
be
saying
determined.
is eventually you're going to be media mogul, Freddie. You're going to have a movie under your belt. You're going to have a bunch of money, and you're going to fund this website, get a bunch of ad revenue, and it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it's like
That's the dream.
the dream is to one day do my main job be movie related, whatever it will be, filmmaking, or it has to be like a distributor for content. The podcast is still growing. There's so much capability, and it's there. It's just like it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time and effort for sure. And that's the thing that I want to focus on more too is time management. It's like, cool, if I solely focus on the website, that takes away from making the short films. If I put too much time in the short films, it takes away from writing the reviews or maybe the film festival coverage. Um, yeah, it's a lot of side projects. But at the same time, you have to put your hand in everything so you can grow upon it too. And as of recently, I just got accepted to the SF Film Committee for the film festival. So I will start reviewing short films of what's being submitted to be showcased at the San Francisco Film Festival. So now I'm doing that too, and that's like a lot of time and effort and reviews. But I have to do it. I love to do it. It's
Well,
just
we
exhausting.
absolutely believe in you, and we think it's going to be awesome to see what you're doing in the next 10 years
Yeah, I
and
appreciate it.
where you're at. But we're probably going to check in with you before that. I mean, let's be honest. Once
Yes.
once you get that short film out there, we're going to have you back on the show and talk about that experience, because that's going to be a pretty amazing thing to talk about, I think.
Right. And I really want to make just a short film, very indie, maybe even with just an iPhone just to practice. And then we have one that's coming out, or it's in pre production, but we're going to start shooting next year, which that one actually has like, I mean, for me, a sizable budget. I'm like, I can never afford to do something like that, but I'm there as a producer. So I'm like, cool, I'm down. I'll help you make this movie, but you do like the rest because I don't know how to like crowdfund or anything like that. We tried once. And I was like, oh, it was a little disappointing, but we learned a lot from it. It's all a learning experience.
It's all a learning experience. That's it. I mean, look at Evil Dead. You got these
Yeah.
guys back in the 70s who are going door to door trying to sell a film to people and be like, "Hey, you'll get a return on your money. We just need money now for the filming." And they had to stop multiple times throughout the filming of the movie to get more funding and try and figure it all out. And they eventually got there, and you know weird things happened with the making of that film, and then the preceding film where they couldn't do the second film the way they wanted to because of the rights situation. But
Right.
if that's not an ultimate learning experience, I don't know what is. And then you have something like Paranormal Activity, which was a full length feature made on $10,000. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know
It's
it's it's
possible.
it's possible to make your dreams come true even when you don't have anything to really put forward.
Okay.
And
I think
so
this would be a great segue to talk about Host, what I brought up earlier.
oh, perfect.
Host. So 2020, obviously rough year for a lot of people. It was the first lockdown for us. So pretty much me, I'm happy I was working at a company, or I still work for this company. I'm working for a company that takes care of us where we closed down our store for about 3 months. And we were doing like training at home. So it was work from home. And it was a time where, at least for me, my mental health wasn't that great. For a lot of people, it wasn't as well. I'm a very social person. I'm definitely an extrovert. I love doing stuff with people. I don't like to be by myself too often. Better now for sure. Love myself now. But it's one of those things where it's like, all right, it's lockdown. I don't know what I'm really doing. And it allowed me the time to revamp my website and then actually start writing reviews again. But then when Host came out, they made a movie via Zoom, and it was just a group of friends that were like, "Hey, we're in lockdown. Let's make a movie together." And they made this movie, and I'm pretty sure it's still sitting at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's a really great movie. Highly recommend Host. It's on Shudder. Check it out. And I was like, if this group of friends can come together and make a movie during lockdown, what's stopping me? And that skyrocketed my motivation to like full force go towards my passions. Like, if I'm going to be in lockdown, I'm going to start working on stuff. So I remade my website. The website is now more simple and more clean and more like simplistic, but it looks really good now. I started doing a lot more stuff in the horror community. I started going on other people's podcasts, which allows me to communicate with people and talk to people, so I'm not like less alone. And then that's when I started writing more reviews, and more movies were coming out on streaming services, and the movie theaters were closed, so you can start watching stuff on demand immediately. So it allowed me like an avenue of like, cool, I can do this on my own time and I don't have to go anywhere. So like in Prince's episode with you guys, he's like, 2020 was a good year for me. Strangely enough, it was a very good year for me as well. And of course, that's when we got picked up by Bloody Disgusting. It's just like thing after thing after thing was working out towards my passion. And that skyrocketed me to like, just like, I can do this. If the people from Host can do it, I can do it. And then they're like really kind people, and I was reaching out to them. They were giving me hints and like how to do stuff. I was like, cool. And that's when I was like really part of the horror community. It's like, you guys are really creative, amazing people. So yeah, that's where like my motivation kicked off in 2020 a lot too.
I feel like a lot of people had to kind of take an inward look, right, at what they were
Oh yeah,
doing, what life was, and how they could make changes for, them. I mean, think about
yeah,
like the essential workers that had to work through the pandemic and had to drive on practically empty roads while they were doing their job and dropping off and delivering, food or goods or working in a hospital, all while this horrible thing was happening.
right,
I mean, they had to look at their lives and see if this is really what they wanted to do. Maybe it bolstered what they were doing. And then the people that were stuck inside really had to internalize, is there anything I can be doing that's not just sitting here, just passing time waiting for everything to go back to normal, which, let's be honest, it's never going to go back to normal at this point.
right,
That things have changed. The world has changed. Whether or not we're all wearing masks outside or what, the world has changed and it's a different experience.
right.
Um,
Yeah, it adapted very quickly to something different. And that's where like a lot of like my internal friends too, they're like, "Oh, I always wanted to start streaming." It gave them the opportunity to start streaming. People who had art, they started streaming their art as well. So there was a lot of influx of people like streaming their content, whether it be like live podcasts or like them making a fan made poster. And I still see these people constantly doing it too, even after lockdown. It's like that's awesome to see someone spark initiate and then like gets continued on during lockdown. It did
Absolutely.
have people, yeah, like you said, take a step back and really reflect on what they wanted to do in life and kind of give them that crutch to do so, which is
I
yeah,
mean,
awesome.
this
Unfortunate for sure
show,
for everything
this
from
show right
2020, but
here,
yeah.
we wouldn't
Yeah.
exist without the pandemic. It's very interesting. It brought a very strange, eclectic group of people together, and
Yeah.
we
I
made
was
a very interesting video together and started some shows, and this is the one that survived so far.
I love it. I always liked the slogan, even though it was kind of cheesy, "Alone together," and I was like, it felt that way for sure. Even though we're alone in our lockdown and then stuff like that, but we did everything together. We still motivate
Yeah,
each
I
other.
mean, even celebrities got together to do
Yeah,
things,
charity work and everything like that. It was great. It was cool to see.
charity work, or like there was like the Lord of the Rings like reunite rewatch of the trilogy where
Right.
they, like, a bunch of the cast members got together on Zoom and watched the movie with a bunch of people. And then like, not just that one, but like that whole thing started to become a trend where it would just be people, celebrities watching, directors watching their movies with fans and live streaming it over, or live posting about it on Twitter while they were watching it, and just all these really cool experiences that people got, connections that were made. I mean, I got
Oh
to
yeah.
interview Rahul Kohli. I say that on
That's
like
so
almost every
awesome.
episode, but
Yeah.
like myself and a group of people got to interview Rahul Kohli. It was just insane, and I've got to see some amazing things happen over the course. I mean, we interviewed Mike Bithell. Like, in what world did
Oh
we
yeah.
think that we would ever be able to interview Mike Bithell?
It,
Um,
it's those awesome moments to see. I love hearing stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah, it's so cool.
it's so crazy. But yeah, I'm glad that you found that passion. I'm glad that you found these things that have really propelled you into figuring out what it is that you want to do. And yeah, sure, the road still has many different paths you could walk down,
Hmm.
but at least you're walking in the direction that you need to be, right? And
Exactly.
I think that's
Yeah.
amazing.
And I love like even like talking about it right now and reflecting back. I never did anything alone. It was always a collaborative effort with other people too. It's like I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for other people, or like the motivation or the inspiration or just people making great content, just being kind and I don't know, supportive. It's a crazy feeling. I even remember during the pandemic, even within my own friend group, they know like I love movies. They're like, well, let's do like movie marathons, even though we're like not together. We would say like, all right, exactly when it turns 7 p.m., press play, and we would like watch all of the Harry Potter like series or like all of the not Lord of the Rings, Star Wars from timeline on and stuff like that. It's like, all right, exactly 7 p.m. We press play at the same time, and we'll text each other about the scenes and stuff like that too. So it was very much a good time. Everything was about timing. Everything just like fit properly, and I'm very, very, very thankful for it.
That was us, our friends. We would be like, "Oh, we want to see this movie. We want to watch this movie," and we'd hop into Discord, and one of
Yeah.
us would play it on the stream, so we could all watch it as if we were having a couch party over at
Yeah.
like it's such an interesting thing. All these things that we used to do that we used to just take for granted, going over to a friend's house and watching movies or playing a board game. uh all of a sudden now we have to think about, well, what are the ramifications of me going outside and going over to this person's house? Have they been outside? Have they come into contact with anybody? Thankfully that stuff is becoming less of a worry because of vaccines and different protocols, people just naturally being more careful about it. But back when it was still questionable thing and you hadn't seen your friends in a really long time, there was all of a sudden like, well, how do we make this work but not endanger each other?
Right. Yeah, it's funny. Like social media was such a weird time during that time too, where it was like I don't know, it felt very dangerous. Where it's like, see a chug, do a chug. See 10 push-ups, do 10 push-ups. See a shot, do a shot. I'm like, what is this like social media going on right now? It's like it's just our way to interact with each other, I guess,
Yeah.
during that long time. And I was like, oh, that's cool. A lot of FaceTime calls. That was a big thing. I turned my room into like a club where like I had like lights on the ceiling and I had music playing and I would like FaceTime my friends. It's like, all right, we're all out in the club, guys. We're all here having fun. It's like making it somehow possible to like hang out with each other. But yeah, very interesting times. A lot better now, thank God. Because like I
So
said, big people person.
now, if you could isolate your dream, if you could distill it
Mm,
down into a single drop, from the wild, you know, beaker that it's in right now, filled with a ton of liquid.
yeah.
If you could distill one thing, if you could just do that one dream project, what would it be?
Um, it always goes back to like I want to make one solid feature film that could help someone's mental health. A big one for me, like what I can like relate it to, is The Night House by David Bruckner. That movie came out, I think, 2 years ago, 2021, so last year, and that affected me, and it helped me heal a lot of things for myself, dealing with like depression, anxiety, and like voices in my head and stuff like that. Um, I want to make something as impactful as that movie was impactful for me, even if it changes one person's life. That's my main goal. I think that's one of the things where like I dream to inspire that type of effects. If I can do that, the goal met. I can like die the next day. It's fine. My life goal's complete. But I'm a very big advocate for like mental health and stuff like that too. But I want to make something meaningful. I want to tell a very important story, whatever that story might be.
Without spoiling Night House,
Yeah.
one thing I absolutely love about that movie is how much you can have a kind of self-interpretation of what actually happened.
Oh yeah.
Like, it obviously has a concrete start, middle, and end, but the events that happen within that film are left up to so much interpretation because
Yep.
of how brilliantly everything is put together. It's
Yeah.
like the exact opposite of something like Hereditary, right? Where Hereditary had a very specific goal in mind. You know what that movie is. There's no way to really interpret that movie in a different way. I mean, obviously there's different subjective themes that could be taken from that, but like the core plot of the story is what it is in that movie.
Yeah,
But for Night
it's
House, there's so much left to interpretation and the way you internalize and process that film.
yeah. I think the writers Ben and Luke, they're really incredible at telling two different like storylines in that movie. And it's funny because there's plot holes for both. So either way, each like interpretation could be right. And we were lucky enough to talk to David Bruckner and interview him for Nightlight and kind of talk about his early start and how he used to work with like anthology movies and then worked himself up to like doing The Ritual and then doing The Night House and very soon Hellraiser. And I love that with Hellraiser, he's keeping the two writers on board as well. Ben Lovett as well for music, because I think the score in The Night House is really well done. But yeah, the themes in the movie is really what the story is all about. The actual thing that she's going through. But at the same time, she's a storyteller that you can't really trust because you don't know what's real, what's not. And not to spoil anything, of course. And then it kind of shows a little bit about your friend group too, where like her best friend, I was like, oh, she's such a good person. Everyone should have a friend like her. But yeah, no, I think the story itself is what's powerful, not really what you can like come up with like the ending wise. Because yeah, like when we did the Night House for Nightlight, when we were breaking it down scene by scene, you can tell like, oh yeah, there's plot holes everywhere. But at the same time, they're intentional because this doesn't matter. It's just a story about her, and the focus about her and what she's going through is what matters. And I think there's something beautiful in that.
I think it's interesting too because some people might say plot holes, but
Right.
a lot of the times our mind fills in the gaps, right?
Yes.
We kind of create our own narrative as to why, like, for example, even something as simple as a water bottle sitting in a different spot in a scene, we internalize, oh, they probably like picked it up, had it in their hand because it's a shoulder shot, and then set it
Right.
back down when it cut to the other character or something. Even though it probably was a continuity error, our brain kind of interprets those things as what could have happened instead of like why the real reason as to why it's there.
And I think it makes it more of a personal experience that way too, because we relate to whatever we relate to when watching it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is great.
Absolutely. However, you just blew my mind. I did not realize that the filmmaker that made The Ritual and Night House is the one working on Hellraiser.
Oh yeah, it's in really good hands. And from what I've been hearing, it's going to be great.
I've been seeing all the promotional stuff, and I love the look of everything. The trailer was phenomenal. I just never really paid attention to who was making it. And that fact has me so excited because, yeah, I mean, the original Hellraiser is one of my favorite like horror films. It had so many great ideas and so many cool kind of visual gags, and the overall just kind of like different type of horror villain that movie presented, I thought was just something really cool for an era that was filled with kind of the slasher genre, right?
Right.
And seeing this new one, I'm so excited. I want it to be good, and I love what they've done with Pinhead. I think it's going to be absolutely incredible. And now I'm at that point where I'm like, oh crap, are my expectations too high?
Yeah, I mean, mine are pretty high, but I know he's gonna knock it out of the park. And I feel like if people haven't heard David Bruckner's name, they definitely will now. I think this is really gonna put him on the map, and it's gonna allow him to do more projects. And I really like him as a storyteller, and the way he actually shoots, like his shots are very intentional, and you can very much see that in The Night House, obviously with like the optical illusions and the different angles, and how the tension builds with just like the camera movement. But I think he is gonna be one of like the horror genre greats, right alongside with like Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan obviously is one of my favorite directors as well too.
Talk about someone who does everything intentionally.
Oh yeah, no, very much so, and talks about those important themes as well too. So he's another person I really look up to too, because he talks about a lot of important stories that people can relate to. Yeah.
And also, if you haven't seen The Ritual or Night House, please go check them out. The Ritual was such a surprise for me. Like, I did not know what I was going into. I was just listening to Nightlight, and I saw The Ritual pop up, and I was like, oh, I need to go see this movie so I can listen to this episode. And had never heard of the film, hadn't seen it. I
Mm.
think it was probably. I think I started my Nightlight journey in 2020, late 2020, early 2021, somewhere around there. Oh no, it would have been early 2021 because my introduction to Nightlight was Prince. Like we interviewed Prince. Ben, please be excited.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah, he got Prince on for Out of Our League, and I just had so much fun talking to Prince, and it was like, so amazing. I was like, I have to check out this podcast. And then, listening to you and David and him just talk about all these different movies. Like I said earlier, I think when we were just talking, it kind of reignited my passion for horror. And I just started like binging horror movies left and right again. I was like fell back in love with the catharsis that you get from, the different stories and the different things that go on within a horror film. That's just so independent and different from any other type of media because they're not
Exactly.
afraid to go to certain places. And that doesn't mean that every movie out there is afraid to go a certain place, but horror just kind of breaks those barriers. It doesn't have as much room to need to stop at a certain place, and
I
that's
agree.
sometimes for better or for worse.
No, I love hearing that, and I think you're completely right. There's so many different subgenres, different ways to tell a story. It could be representative, it could be like symbolic, it can be straightforward, it could be a slasher, it could be a creature feature. There's so much. I generally feel there is a horror film for every single person out there. Even if you're not a horror fan, there's going to be a horror film that you're going to love. And I love that. Even like horror comedies, even like entry level horror for like family films and stuff like that. I was just talking about Frankenweenie yesterday because I was like, oh, this is aesthetically really cool and pleasing. Danny Elfman's score is really awesome. Um, no, there's so much to love within the horror genre. And like you said, they can go places where not other films can because they take the risk anyways. And I feel like, at least for this year, I feel like this was definitely the year for horror. Great releases this year.
Yeah. I mean, let's be real, like the last probably 5 to 7 years, all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden we've just had an
Influx.
insane amount of like just really good horror movies that
Yeah.
have just absolutely pushed boundaries and barriers, and it's been absolutely amazing to see what people are capable of.
Oh, yeah. No, I feel like as a cinephile, horror is for sure my favorite genre because I feel like that's where you can do the most storytelling, any type of storytelling. I keep forgetting that even Fresh came out this year, and that was like a brand new way of doing a story too, where it's like
Oh
there's
my
like a romantic
god.
comedy for the first
No,
20 minutes,
it is a
and then it
romantic
just
comedy.
flips. Yeah, and I was
No,
just like,
it doesn't flip at
yes.
all. It's just a romantic
I mean,
comedy.
still, yeah, I could just eat that movie up. So
I'm
good.
I'm going to tell you a quick little anecdote to that. I thought it was a rom-com. So
Oh,
my friend, again, Ben, please be excited, was like, "Hey, you should check out Fresh. It's a really cute romantic comedy. It's got the Winter Soldier in it, and the actress who plays the lead is really cool, and it's a great take on modern dating." And so I went into this movie not at all knowing it was what it was.
right.
And it was when that moment happens, it was just such a shock to me. I was like, you start to see it kind of build up, and you're like, wait, what?
I feel horror vibes.
Wait,
I feel it.
yeah.
Yeah,
There are things you should be doing that you're not doing right now. I get it. This is the first time you felt this way in a really long time, but maybe you
right.
shouldn't do the thing you're doing right now. Um, and it still just hit me like, oh wow, I'm in for a very different movie than I thought I was.
Yeah,
Um,
it's incredible.
the other thing I really love about that movie is that it's unabashedly a take from a woman's perspective,
Yeah.
right? Like you see I'm going to spoil a little bit, so sorry for anybody listening. When she's first kind of dating, you see on her first date that it's not going well. The dude is just acting like a complete tool, and expects her to pay for the date, if I remember correctly, and
Yeah.
whatever and whatnot. And then she goes home, she's like back on Tinder, and then like some guy starts she sees like a picture of a dog, I think, and she's like, cute dog in the messages, and then he's like, oh yeah, his name's whatever, and then just sends her a dick pic.
Oh
And
yeah.
it was like, at that moment I was like, oh, this has to be written by a woman. So I looked it up, and of course, yeah, it was written and directed by two incredible women, and I can't wait to see what they do in the future, because
They
Fresh
nailed it.
absolutely wowed me when I watched it.
Yeah, it's one of those movies where like once you see it, you want your friends to see it, and you want to be there when they see it. It's like you're gonna like look at their reaction, like, wait, what movie are we watching? And I love movies like that. I love movies where like if I fall in love with it, even if it has like a twist, I'll rewatch it over and over again with friends just to introduce them to that movie, because it makes me that much happier to see them see that like facial reaction. But like, what did you get myself into? It's like, you're gonna love this movie.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah,
that's how
I
I feel about
also.
Barbarian. Barbarian's
Oh man,
another
I
great
can't
one.
wait. I can't wait to check that movie out. I know
Yeah.
nothing about it other than
Good.
who's
Go
in
in
it.
as blind as possible.
And
That's the best way to look at it.
I know that a woman goes to like a be an Airbnb, right?
You know too much. Just kidding.
I know that she goes to an Airbnb, and that's about all I know. So
That's perfect.
I'm
It's one of those
excited
movies
to
where
check
just
that one out.
like, yeah, it's probably one of the best rides I've had this year for sure. I'm
That's
going to see
awesome.
it a third time tonight in theaters with new friends. Like I said, I'll watch a movie over and over again just to see their
But
reaction.
yeah, I feel like we need more movies that make men uncomfortable.
I agree. Well,
Because
speaking of, there's a great movie called Men that came out this year, which made me feel very uncomfortable. Man,
yes,
that was a
I have
movie.
not seen that yet either. That's by Ex Machina writer and director,
Yes. A24 film.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on his name, but
Oh man, I'm
amazing
terrible with
director.
names.
That's where it's like I can watch it once and I'm good for that
Yeah,
one.
that's
But
funny.
yeah.
I remember the first time I watched Bite.
Yeah. There's yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing. So going, we could talk about movies all day, but this is supposed to be about you, not about movies.
Which is about me, technically.
I mean, that's true. That is true. You are movies.
I am movies.
You are made of movies.
I am.
So a couple fun questions for you. First one, aside from Hugo and Host, what would you say some of your favorite movies are? Just like a quick, off the top of your head, top 10, not top 10, but like 10 movies off the top
I
of
mean,
your
I
head.
have my list. I can pull it up.
I know it's hard. I know it's hard for a lot of people to quantify.
I mean, off the
like
top of my head,
order. So I don't want to do a top 10.
Right.
I just want to do like just off the top of your head, 10 movies.
I can start with like the horror genre for sure. Alien was a big impact for me. The Thing was a huge one.
Wait,
The Conjuring.
I got to stop you for just a moment.
Yeah.
How do you feel Alien versus Aliens?
Wait, Alien versus. Oh, okay. I was like, is there a new movie coming out called Alien?
Oh my god, that'd be hilarious.
Okay. I prefer Alien. Alien is the one that kind of like sparked my interest a lot in like within film too, and how it's shot and like how Ridley Scott like moves the camera and kind of like showcases the actual alien, the tension between Sigourney Weaver. Aliens is a really good movie. I just don't think it's scary. It's more of an action film for me, and I really enjoy it. But it's not one I actually come back to a lot. So if I watch any movie within the Alien franchise, it's really funny. It's just Alien or Prometheus. I love Prometheus, and I'll die on that hill. I think Prometheus is a masterpiece. That's a strong word for it, but I'm going to hold myself to it. I think the world building in the Alien franchise is phenomenal. And I fell in love with the marketing that Prometheus had, where they had like the TED video with Michael Fassbender. Oh no, with what's his name? Oh god, I'm gonna forget. But Wayland is giving a speech. Oh, Guy Pearce. He's giving a speech to like a crowd, and it's like a TED talk, but it's a TED talk in the future, and he's talking about how he's gonna look out the universe, and we're gonna be out there just like the god of Prometheus, and like earn that flame and stuff like that. And then you can go on their Prometheus website and you can actually sign up as an employee as the Wayland Corporation and stuff like that. So they had like an application process. They had like all of the worlds that they terraformed. I loved the world building that they created for Alien. So that just blows my mind. I love movies that have like evil corporations involved for some reason. First, like, cool, I can relate to that. There's some evil corporations out in the world doing bad things, but like this is just on a whole different level. So I love that. But yeah, that's my love for Aliens.
Wayland Yutani, building better
Wayland
futures today.
Or better worlds. Yes.
Yeah. Better worlds. Yes. But yes, I think they're both phenomenal films. I think that they are both top tier, 10 out of 10, depending on if you lean one way or the other. But I'm just like you. I watch Alien probably once a year. And it's probably I mean, honestly, next to Midsummer, like Midsummer has kind of become like one of my like cathartic movies. I have a bad day.
Damn.
I want to go watch Midsummer because they're having a way worse day than I am.
That's true. I guess from comparison, I guess, yeah.
But recently I've found myself kind of turning to Midsummer and just kind of watching that movie. Just because it is most of that movie is kind of calm and serene, right?
Right.
But also dealing with a lot of kind of mental health stuff.
Yeah.
And so if I just have had a terrible day, like I like to turn to that movie. But for the longest time, that movie's been Alien for me. I'll just throw on Alien, and it's never not going to be Alien. But that's just such a comfort movie for me. I just love
it holds up very,
the whole
very
crew.
well.
Yeah, I love the whole crew. I love all the characters. And like you said, the way that they build Ripley throughout the film, Sigourney Weaver's character, it's such a good. And you know what? The cat doesn't die.
That's true. The cat gets a lot of screen time. Like, he even goes face to face with an alien, and the alien's like, "Nah, I'll leave you alone."
Right. All right. So back to your list. You said Alien. I think The Thing, The Conjuring.
The Conjuring. I just rewatched Insidious, which we'll talk about in the future sense. I remember how much I loved that movie rewatching it. I was like, oh, this is such a great scary movie. The story itself it's okay, but like the effect of like the jump scares and the actual tension building and the scary imagery, I'm like, James Wan's got a fucked up mind, and I love it. I love James Wan. So I gotta throw in there Malignant. I love Malignant. I don't care what people say.
You beat me. You beat me to it. I absolutely loved Malignant. I thought that movie was so much fun. And I know it was a lot different than kind of what people are used to from James Wan.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, except for Aquaman. I still can't believe that movie was made by him. Every time I watch it, I'm like, this is a James Wan film? And not in a bad way. Like, it's surprising. Because, did we lose Freddy?
Looks like it.
Well, we got to fill some dead air here for a minute while we get Freddy back. I'm so sad now. Looking at this frozen still, I like the Jason mask in the background. The Trick or Treat I think it's a box set. I can't quite tell.
So
Fangoria.
side tangent. I'm gonna bring it up now just because. Did you see that Crystal Dynamics is sending out a survey regarding the Legacy of Kain series?
Oh yeah, I took it first thing this morning.
Nice.
I am so excited about that freaking. Like, I know it's just a survey. I even messaged Tam this morning. I was like, "How real do you think this is?" Not in the sense of the survey, but like in the sense of the game. Obviously, he hasn't responded. It's the weekend. He's not on the clock. He's not checking Twitter right now. He's probably out there doing fun stuff like going and seeing movie concerts.
Specific survey though, that's like specifically about the Legacy of Kain franchise.
There's some scary stuff on there though, where I know it's probably just
How do you feel about NFTs? No,
well, oh god, none of that was on there. I was glad about that. But it was like, if we were to make a new entry in the franchise, like, would you want to see it be, and it lists a bunch of like categories, and like tactical RPG and stuff was on there, and I was like, this must just be on there because of the fact that they are just trying to fish for anything possible for future games, right?
Yeah,
But the
probably.
other thing I thought was really interesting is they said, what if we were to make a new vampire game, but it wasn't necessarily Legacy of Kain? And I thought that was really interesting too. But you know what? I'd be excited for either one. I
Yeah.
love vampires, so you know, it's a fun thing.
They also gave us Avengers though, so I wouldn't be super excited for anything else.
So Avengers is interesting because it was their first time making an online game, right? Not an online game, but like a Destiny style or what, persistently online games as a service. And I think a lot of what happened to that game was Square Enix being like, hey, we need to maximize money and we need to ride this trend. And we're trying out like 7 different companies to make a games as a service. And we're hoping one of them hits.
Oh, absolutely.
But because I still feel like if that game was just the Kamala story, it would have been fantastic. Just the Kamala story. You concentrate on
If they would
Kamala,
have
her
taken the
story, her
Guardians
power
route and
ups.
just made a solid single player experience, it could have
Ah,
been great. Because I thought the story was
100%.
pretty good.
Yeah. And it just, so
I'm
like,
just talking mad shit because
the
it's fun.
the game was
I like
designed
it. It's a fun game. It's fun.
the game was designed around uh multiplayer, right?
Yeah.
So you were just like started playing characters at really random intervals and it felt really weird. It was like, cool, now I'm Iron Man, but the reason I'm Iron Man is very thin. The Now I'm like Captain America, but the reason I'm Captain America is because I need to be Captain America now because they're trying to teach me how to play Captain America.
Yeah.
Instead of just focusing on the personal story of Kamala Khan meeting the Avengers and, eventually kind of wedging her way into being one of them, which I thought that was the best part of that or that game. But the idea of a Legacy of Kain game is phenomenal, and I really do hope that they are thinking about it, but it doesn't really matter because we're probably not going to see anything for a good 5 to 8 years.
Yeah.
I imagine whatever they've been working on is going to be what they're going to announce in the next year or two. And then, I'm sure they have another project in the background after that. So I doubt we'll see anything unless they've been planning on this a lot longer than we thought, but these just seem like very conceptual ideas in the survey.
I
But
agree.
someday we'll get to relearn about the machinations of fate. And it's going to be amazing. We're going to watch Kane. Now, on the survey it asks, what would you rather see? Would you rather see a remake, a remaster, a reboot, or a sequel? And I feel like if they do a sequel, they need to bring the other games back up, right? Because it's been over a decade. Like what, 15 years almost since the last game?
Yeah. They could probably do it pretty
So,
easily too, but we'll
I mean,
see.
if they did a recap at the beginning, maybe. We're talking about Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver in your absence.
Yeah.
Oh. It was funny. I could see you and I could hear you, and then all of a sudden it just kicked me out of Discord.
Crazy. Yeah, you were just frozen. So at first I just started reading the stuff in the background, like,
Oh
the
yeah.
Jason mask, the Trick or Treat looks like a box set, but I can't quite tell, and the Fangoria magazines and all that stuff. And then
Oh yeah.
then when it was decided that you were definitely gone, we started talking about the Legacy of Kain survey because Crystal Dynamics sent out a survey today, asking people what they'd want to see in a new Legacy of Kain game.
That's
But you're
awesome.
back.
I'm back.
And I completely lost the train of thought that we were on. We were talking about James Wan. Oh, Malignant.
Oh yeah, Malignant. Yes. See, the universe
Um,
doesn't want us to talk how great it is.
nope. No, somebody over at Warner Brothers Discovery was like, nope, click.
It's like I wish we canceled that and did the tax write off. No, hell no.
um,
Um,
but yeah, I loved that movie, man. I thought it was
Me
great.
too.
It was so fun to see all the interesting visual kind of gags that he came up with in creating the world that he did for that movie.
He did full on creative freedom mode and just went for it. And I appreciate a director that does that. It was like, I made a movie that I wanted to make, and some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it, but I definitely fall into loving it.
It's
And
kind of
I do
like
love it.
kind of
Even the
like Death
music.
Stranding for Hideo Kojima, you know? Not
Right.
everyone loves Death Stranding, but you know what? He got to make the game he wanted to make, so
Exactly. And it does look gorgeous, and I think it's well done too. But
absolutely.
yeah, I even bought a vinyl, and I don't even have a vinyl player of the Malignant soundtrack because I find it hella funny because it's so ridiculous and it comes out of nowhere and it kind of like swoops in and it's like overbearing and it's so loud. And no, I love Malignant. I love how crazy it is. Like
That's
that movie
awesome.
should not have been made, and it was made, and that makes me happy.
That's
So like,
awesome.
you made us over $1 billion with Aquaman. Make whatever movie you want, and he did.
God, I'm so scared for Aquaman 2 with all this stuff with
Yeah, some rewrites, some reshoots, getting pushed back.
yeah, all the
Yeah.
Johnny Depp and I forget the actress's name. Um yeah, you
Oh,
know, all that
yeah.
stuff and her getting, you know, cut from the film and all that. I mean, it's for the better as far as, you know,
Right.
if all those accusations are true and those, you know, toxicities happened, like they need to
Right.
be rectified. But at the same time, like it's going to be very interesting to see how that film ends up.
And then, I mean, I guess the bright side is that there's some reshoots with Ben Affleck as Batman again, I guess. It'd be
Sure,
interesting to see
sure.
him in it one last
Man,
time.
he didn't get a fair shake. Like I'm so sad that he was in such same thing for Henry Cavill. Like both of them I
Yeah,
feel like were great icons for the characters that they got to play. But and visually they looked great. But the stories that they were in, man.
yeah, it's not their fault, but I don't know. He's probably my least favorite Batman, sadly, but I don't think he did a bad job. I think he plays a really good Bruce Wayne. It's
Yeah,
just when he becomes Batman, I'm just like, I don't believe you're Batman. You're just some guy in a Batman costume.
well, and
Where this most recent one looks amazing, you feel like Batman with Robert Pattinson.
and it's because we never really got that Batman movie, right? Like we never got to
Right,
see him actually be Batman. There were
right,
glimpses of it, but it's like you said, it didn't quite make it believable because we saw him most of the time out of the costume, or he was doing something like, as far as we're concerned, out of character for Batman.
right. I still don't like that
um,
Batman kills people in that movie, and I was like, "Oh no!"
yeah,
This is the whole point of him going against the Joker, that he'll never cross that point, and then they just threw that away. I'm a big Batman fan, so that's also a fun fact of me. I grew up on the animated series and stuff like that.
I've almost brought up Lego Batman like 3 times throughout this whole thing because like it was like when you were talking about Friends, it reminded me of the song at the very end,
Hmm.
where they're singing like it's, you know, friendship. I forget the song is called, but it's like about friendship and being together and all that stuff. And you got like all the villains and heroes dancing together. It's hilarious.
Yes,
Um, but then there was something else you mentioned that made me want to bring it up again, and I don't remember what that one was, but obviously now here, but
Lego
uh
Batman.
it's when Lego Batman is a better Batman than what we got with Ben Affleck. It's just sad.
Yeah. Okay,
And
I do
again, not
like.
to say that Ben Affleck was a bad Batman, it's just he did not get a great role
Yeah,
for
I
that
love
character.
what they did with Zack Snyder's cut. I think they did an incredible job with the Justice League movie remade, and it shows that they had a really good story going.
Yeah,
So
they
there was
definitely had
potential.
something for sure.
Yeah,
For sure. You just would hope that they'd be farther along after however many movies they had.
very true. You never know. Even very recently, I just read a newsletter that Christian Bale would be down to play Batman again if Christopher Nolan asked him.
Oh, that's
It's like,
funny.
oh, that's cool.
God, if that was the universe we got Batman Beyond in, just like old
Oh,
man
man.
tutor Bruce Wayne for the new up and comer, that'd be great. I'm
Yeah.
okay with that. Originally, I wanted Michael Keaton in that role, but they kind of did that with what they were going to do with Batgirl. So now I'm kind of
Right.
like, all right, he's been used and abused, so let's
He's out.
get Christian Bale. Although I don't know if Christopher Nolan wants to work with Warner Brothers anymore after the whole Tenet
That's fair.
debacle.
Yeah. He's
Um,
Hmm.
yeah. Anyway, so outside of horror, what would you
Yes.
say is your favorite genre of film and why?
Um, I don't know if I have a favorite genre outside of horror. It's a little mixed all over the place. I'm a huge fan of Goodfellas. Goodfellas was a big part of my life too.
Nice.
Um, I think even when I saw that for the first time, I was like, "Oh, I want to grow up to be a gangster." You shouldn't. You should not do that. But that movie makes you want to. Especially the lines like, "Ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a gangster." It's like that always like stays with me. And it's like sad to see that a lot of the cast members this year alone passed away, and I was
Oh
like, "Oh
man,
man, that's so
right.
sad." But yeah, Goodfellas was always going to be there. I'm a big fan of Drive with Ryan Gosling. I
Yo,
think
Gage, get
that
on the mic. Get on the mic, Gage.
you
What
hate it. It's good.
No, he
what
loves it.
a
Okay,
phenomenal film.
I
Just
think it can't be
incredible.
any more perfect. I think that
Oh,
movie is flawless. And a lot of
so
people's
good.
like, "Oh, it's a movie about them just staring at each other for 30 minutes." I'm like, "Yeah, but
Yeah, and it's
there's a lot
awesome.
of emotion." Yeah. The soundtrack, I love the soundtrack. It's amazing. The visuals, the driving. It feels so grounded and real and so like emotional.
Oh,
And
so
the
not Baby
elevator
Driver is
scene,
what you're saying.
I actually really like Baby Driver
I don't know.
too.
Baby Driver is great. I'm just saying you said that the driving feels grounded
Yeah.
and realistic.
Um,
I don't
it,
know.
it
I don't know
does.
if I could say that about Baby Driver. I love that movie. I love what Edgar
Yeah,
Wright did, but it's very much a stylized version of driving.
yeah. Honestly, Baby Driver blows my mind how he has so much attention to detail too. With like the opening scene, like after the first open scene with the bank robbery, where he's just walking to get coffee, and then
Mhm.
like the lyrics are like in the background and like so many Easter eggs.
Well, and then
It blows my mind.
there's like the slight ringing to kind of
Right.
help you empathize with Baby as a character. Um, but there's this really cool, and the reason I bring up the not grounded, more stylized driving is there's a really cool sequence when he's like driving through these backing up semis, and if you look really
Hmm.
closely, the corner of the car clips through one of the semis just a little bit, so it breaks that
Interesting.
immersion of like, he actually made that turn. No, those semis weren't there. Those semis were shot in a second plate, and then they were combined together to make the illusion of him driving through those, because obviously they're not going to have someone actually drive through those. um but like just all the crazy, ridiculous, cool camera movements and stuff that he does
Oh
in that
yeah.
movie feels so stylized and crazy. uh but you're absolutely correct. In Driver, though, it does feel much more grounded and gritty in the way they peel the rubber, as the kids say.
No, yeah, I love Drive. I'm a big fan of that director too, but at the same time, he's very style over substance sometimes. I think Drive is his best movie for sure. With Nicholas Winding Refn. Yeah, he's very stylistic in the other movies that he's made, especially Only God Forgives, which Ryan Gosling comes back as the lead actor. I thought it was really well shot. It's just like one of those movies, just like, not for me. But I appreciate it. A big one for me. My number two movie of all time, Ratatouille. I love
Yo.
Ratatouille. Ratatouille is one of
Okay,
the best
wait.
movies ever made.
We have to talk about Raccoon
Rata-
Tui.
okay, let me. All right, I'll transition then. My number one movie of all time is Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I think is funny that Ratatouille is my second favorite
That's
because it was
awesome.
my first. It took its first place this year.
That's
Yeah.
so great. I didn't like Ratatouille when I first watched it.
How dare you?
Like I enjoyed it, but it wasn't a movie that like climbed on my Pixar top 10, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was just because of my mindset at the time and everything when I was younger. I just thought, oh, this is stupid.
A
And
rat in
then
the kitchen, disgusting.
yeah, I rewatched it later, you know, after maturing a little bit. And I love it. It's an absolutely great
Yes.
film. And the reference in Everything Everywhere All at Once, because you don't get it at first when she's confusing it, right?
Right.
You don't necessarily realize what's happening, but then when they actually make the reference and you see it all happen, you're like, "Oh
Mm-hmm.
my god, it's
Raccoon.
beautiful."
The one with the raccoon.
So beautiful. But yeah, Ratatouille is incredible. It's
Yeah,
such a well done film.
like I said in the very beginning of this podcast, is that movies influenced my life a little bit. Ratatouille was one of them, where the whole everything everyone can cook, or your only limit is your soul. Where it's like it doesn't matter who you are, or where you come from, you can do whatever you want if you like go towards your dreams and stuff like that. Even if you're a rat in the kitchen, you don't belong there because rats don't belong in kitchens. He was the upset of that. Like he was able to complete his dream of being a chef, even though he was a rat in the kitchen. And I love that aspect. Actually, my second tattoo that I have on my right arm, I have your only limit is your soul on there as well. So that's always something that's going to be a part of me because I really believe that's like, if you put your mind to it, no matter who you are or where you come from, you can accomplish it. And I was like, that's Ratatouille for me. I was like, fuck yeah, I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That movie for me, I think, as far as like the you can do anything, is Into the Spider-Verse. The idea of like
Yeah.
anyone can wear the mask.
Yes.
You know, it's like it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what your background is. Anyone can wear the mask.
Yeah.
And
We can all be heroes.
yeah. And that's you know, exemplified by all the different Spider-Men in the movie. And of course, you know, Peter B. Parker's uh opposite of, you know, the other Peter Parker from the beginning of the film, where he was
Right.
all blonde and perfect and never did anything wrong, etc. And
Mm.
yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a very similar message in Ratatouille, something that, like I said earlier, I didn't appreciate when I first watched that film.
Right.
And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, it has to do about like family, connection, relationships, everything. And then speaking of everything, everything, everywhere, all at once, just hit all of the different genres in one movie that I just fell in love with. It had like all of the nostalgic value of like what I appreciate in cinema. I think the Daniels are going to go a very long way. I'm still hoping it will get nominated for Best Picture, but because it came out in March, I don't know if it will. But the acting is phenomenal. I think the storytelling is incredible. It talks about a little bit about like depression as well, family connectivity, and the whole coming from a different country, coming into the U.S. and doing like the American Dream stuff. Talks a lot about movies in general, and like I said, it has every genre in it, which is great to see. So
Yeah,
like
I mean,
that movie was made for me.
you've got
And they
like
have a Ratatouille reference. The movie was made for me. It's literally it has everything I would ever want in a movie. So
yeah,
much
I mean, you've
feels.
got like the kind of cyberpunk crazy like technology, mental mind
Right.
melding stuff going on. Like it's all the weird crazy cosmic stuff happening, mixed martial arts. So many cool action sequences, and talk about like, you know, breaking boundaries earlier,
Yeah.
and not only just on a filmmaking level but storytelling and everything. Very similar themes of, you know, all these different versions of I don't want to spoil the entire movie.
Right.
um but it's absolutely, I agree, I
Almost like
100%
finding
agree,
your place in the
absolutely
world
amazing
and stuff
movie.
like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
No, there's a lot of themes to dive deep
Also,
into.
A24's highest grossing film, is that right?
As of yet,
I
yeah.
remember that.
Yes, it is.
That's pretty cool. Oh,
Which I think
wait.
they got more money now. So they just announced that like yesterday, or Discussing Film posted something about it.
It's so crazy to me. Like, I haven't looked at the numbers, so I don't know what those numbers are. I don't know how well that film did. But
Right.
we're talking you're like post-pandemic.
Right. Yeah.
Post-pandemic, it's their highest grossing film of all time, even pre-pandemic. That's wild.
Yeah.
Wild to me.
And that's because of word of mouth, which is
Right.
great. That's something where like it kept on going. It didn't come out with a big box office release in its first week. It was small. I think it just made its budget back, and that's it. But the thing that kept it going was like word of mouth, and people kept on going to see it because people loved it, and I love that.
Not to mention, just the majorly Asian cast for the movie.
Yes,
It's like
amazing cast.
hardly any there was no white savior, white lead. Like it was so
Hmm.
great to see a movie, that is in that space do so well. Because
Yeah,
we don't get to see those wins very often.
and that's where I got to see it at South by Southwest, so it was like the premiere, and the Daniels were there, and the whole cast and crew were there, and it was one of those moments where like this was the opening film for South by Southwest, and this is my very first film festival ever, and this is my very first screening, and for a movie like that to impact me so much of having that powerful message, I didn't say anything at all when the movie ended. I just looked at my friend, he looked at me, he's like, "That was a really good movie, huh?" I'm like, yeah, that was a really good movie. That's all we could say. We were just like in shock. And then we got to see them talk about it after the movie was done, and they talked about how much love was put into it, and that they were taking a big risk for doing all these crazy elements of chaos. And people like stood up and applauded for that movie. And it was just like one of those feelings. It was like I'm surrounded by cinephiles watching a really great movie, and we're celebrating it. Like people cheered during the scenes. I've never seen that before ever. Like I go to the movies a lot, maybe like once or twice a week, like a stupid amount. But I've never had a movie experience like that where everyone's just in love with movies and they're celebrating it and they're cheering and like people are applauding like mid scene and stuff like that. And they're like, "Yeah, that's awesome." Like I'm not gonna spoil anything, but like what is it called? The little backpack that you put around your waist.
Oh, the fanny pack?
Fanny pack, yeah, the fanny pack scene. Like people were going wild for that scene, and when I saw it a second time in theaters when I came back home, the opening credits to the movie where like they're showing all of the logos and stuff like that, I started to tear up, and I've never had that experience where like, why am I tearing up before a movie? And I was like, it's because of the journey I'm about to go on again. Like that affected me that much. Where I'm like, this
That's
movie is
awesome.
special. Like, why am I getting emotional before a movie starts? Because I know how badly it's gonna affect me. I was like, damn, that was a good movie. Yeah, no, I really enjoy it. I've seen it 6 times in theaters. That's the
Wow.
most times I've ever seen any movie in theaters. And it's because like even when it came back in theaters for like a month more, they're like, "Oh, it's getting re-released." It's like, how am I going to see my favorite movie of all time in theaters again? Like I had to. It's like it's one of those things like it's not going to be in theaters again, so I need to see it one more time. And I kept on saying that I need to see it one more time. I need to see it one more time. This is my favorite movie of all time. I need to see it in theaters that one more time. So it kept on bringing me back. I was like, "Damn, this movie's good. It got me."
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's if you go back to 2019 and Parasite and the director's statement of like Hollywood, get over yourself. It's 1 inch of subtitles stopping this movie from being a crazy ridiculous success. And so when you said they were taking a risk, having a mixed language film like that where you have English spoken in some parts and then native languages spoken in others, it's can be hard, to try and market that to people. And I'm so glad that they were able to make that film and that so many people enjoyed it, because that's a huge worry in the market, obviously with
Yeah.
with all those things. So yeah, it's such an achievement on so many different levels, and I'm so happy that it was successful in the ways that it was
Yeah.
successful. And what a great film to have at your number one. That's
I
awesome.
know. I'm. This is why I appreciate A24 as a production company a lot too, as a distributor, is that they allow these indie films or more risky films to be distributed, and they trust it and they trust the process, and they're all about the creative freedom of directors, and they allow these stories to be told. Another one that blows my mind is with Ty West being able to do X and then Pearl right after, and it's like a hidden project that no one knew about.
Let's let's talk about the fact that that man produced 2 films
In 1 year.
in 1 year. Like,
And has a third one already
what?
coming out too. It's
I
insane.
can't even, like, that's just blows me away that
So
he
yeah.
was able to put all that together.
The
'Cause
crazy aspect of like the credits rolling and then you get the trailer of the next movie. It's like, what?
yeah.
There's
I mean,
another one made already and it's coming out like 4 months later. That's crazy.
we've seen movies filmed back to back before and, you know,
Right.
released like once a year. Obviously, you know, there's those horror franchises where they try and release, you know, one a year until
Right.
the franchise goes stale or whatever. But yeah, I mean, to be the single, like, not obviously single, it's a group effort, but the
Mhm.
head of a film project of multiple films and to get them all out so quickly is just mind blowing to me. And so X and Pearl are A24 as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so is another
That's
movie that a lot of
incredible.
people don't know is Bodies, 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 which I loved as well.
Dude, A24 just throwing movies out this year. Like, didn't Lamb come out this year too? Or was that late
Uh
last year?
Lamb came out last year, but they had
Okay.
Marcel and the Shell, which was also a really great, like, heartwarming story. That movie made me cry. That was a good movie. They're coming out with a lot of stuff in the near future too. But I'm pretty sure they came out with maybe like 6 to 10 movies this year alone.
Yeah, it's wild to see all the stuff they're doing.
Yeah.
Another film, you know, entrepreneur that really opened up a lot of doors is Blumhouse.
Oh yeah.
Um, so I mean, yeah, Blumhouse is pretty incredible for similar reasons, but obviously not quite as wide of uh an eclectic collection of films as A24 puts out.
Yeah. But Blumhouse, it's a very noticeable name for sure. They have a great reputation. They put out a lot
Yeah.
of content.
I'm still waiting for that Spawn movie though. Man.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And I love that Blumhouse also does like Welcome to Blumhouse with Hulu that they did. I think it was
Yeah.
last year, and they just like knocked out like 4 movies and put it on the streaming
I
service. And I
think
was like, that was cool.
I think they've been doing that for, well, I don't know if Blumhouse was partnered with them, but I know that Hulu has been doing their like horror
Halloween, yeah, horror
Halloween stuff
section.
for quite a few years now.
Yes,
It's
I
really
know they
cool.
have I think it's called Halloween Bites, which are like 30 short films that they're about to release this year for Halloween time. I think it starts like today. Yeah,
That's awesome.
so
All
Hulu is
right.
a great spot for horror.
I'm going to throw over some of our community questions now.
Okay.
Because I do want to make sure we get these read. We have one, Frederick Nuti, who says, "I'm so excited," and throws up
Nice.
the clap hands. Is that the praise hands? I can never remember which one that
I
is.
don't know why I use that emoji a lot. I'm just like this is like just my happy pose. Like I just put
If
my hands
I
up.
Yes, if I put my mouse over it, it says raising hands. That's what I'm going to go with. Then we
Like
have Prince Jackson. Oh, sorry, what?
no, I was about to say never mind. I was about to say like I'm about to fight. I'm raising hands.
Hopefully, you're not raising those kind of hands. I like you too much. So Prince Jackson at the Head Night says,
I
"When
saw
can you
this.
take over Nightlight for good? I'm ready to retire." And then he
Yeah,
throws out the eyes emoji.
yeah, he's not gonna retire anytime soon. But I'll take over for the next few episodes, like I told him. But yeah, it's funny. It makes me so nervous every time he like, oh, I need to take a break real quick. I'm like, yeah, you deserve a break, but that means I'm about to host, and that always is like so nerve wracking. It always works out though. It's a lot of fun. It's just a lot of talking, and that's the big thing. I love Prince to death because a lot of people don't know what goes behind the scenes with like the Nightlight doing the show notes. Like I always say like if it's an hour and a half movie to do the show notes, it'll probably take about 3 to 4 hours. And that's
Oh man,
because it's scene by scene analysis, so you're writing down what happens scene by scene. So that's a lot of pausing. I love like going back. It's like what did they say, and then you have to like get the right phrase of what they say. Sometimes you're quoting characters, but he does that every single week, and he works full time. He has a wife. He has a child. He does all of these other side projects. He's constantly collaborating with other people. And it's one of those things. Is like that's something you always have to admire. And it's like, yeah, at the same time, it's like I get nervous about taking over. I'm happy to take over to have him take a break between the stuff as well. And it makes me happy to do it too. And it makes me a better critic when I do my movie reviews because they're seeing scene by scene analysis too. So it helps me outside of the podcast itself too.
Yeah, he lost his co-host for Salem's Lot and ended up throwing out a call out. And for once, I saw the tweet not 12 hours later. I saw it like right when he threw it up, and I DM'd him, and he was like, "Hey, you're the first person to DM me about this. Like, I'd love to have you on the show." And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And that same day, after his tweet, I ended up watching all of the, like, what is it, like 3.5 hours of Salem's Lot.
Oh yeah,
and
it's a long movie.
I took basic notes, just like as I was going, like watching it, I'd pause it and write down some notes. And so it ended up taking almost like 5 hours to complete the movie. I can't imagine doing a more complete breakdown and then you know, doing it every single week. Has he ever thought about, you know, like downloading the script and then doing edits while he's watching the film?
I mean, I've definitely thought about it and stuff like that too, but I think it just gives us a more personalized way we break down things, I guess.
Yeah, it's more like through the lens breakdown instead of like generic,
like
breakdown.
what we see when we break stuff down. Yeah,
that's for sure.
Because sometimes we'll talk about like the different camera angles in the show notes and stuff like that, or like how we perceive it. And I think that's the big thing. It's like that's what we bring to the table. Is that with Nightlight, we're not just doing a script breakdown. It's kind of like our interpretation breakdown into conversation and stuff like that too. But yeah, it would make things a lot easier. But at the same time, we try to have our own creative freedom with it.
My favorite is always when y'all bring up like a thing that happened in the subtitles. You're like, I never noticed that before, but the subtitles say this. And I'm like, wait, what? Because it always blows my mind because I don't always watch stuff with subtitles. But it makes sense if you're trying to like really take notes and whatnot to have the subtitles there, so you know exactly what people are saying and everything. So it's like when those little notes pop up in the shows, it's always like my favorite little eggs that crop up.
Oh yeah. I love watching movies with subtitles now. It helps me like discover more things that the director or like the writing was intentional about. And it's funny where it's like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Where I just saw Hocus Pocus 2, a very recent movie that just came out yesterday, and I was watching with the subtitles, and they had like a home pod, and the home pod was like talking, and obviously that's Siri. But in the subtitles, it was saying like, "Oh, Alexa says this." I'm like, what? It's like that's so bad. No, it's not.
That reminds me
two completely different companies.
I just watched Johnny Mnemonic
Nice.
on Netflix, and the subtitles for that movie, there's a moment when he grabs his iPhone and it's like a VR headset communicator. So they literally meant EYE phone, but the dictation in the subtitles says I lowercase capital phone, just like the Apple product.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And this is a movie from like what, 1992 or something? I don't remember. Maybe 95. So obviously there was no remnants of the iPhone, but apparently when this movie dropped on Netflix last year, it became like a huge topic of article of like, did Johnny Mnemonic predict the iPhone or something like that? It's like, no, that's not what happened. Like was meant to be iPhone. Like that's why he puts it over his eyes while he's communicating. But yeah, it's just interesting how modern dialect and nomenclature influences, you know, subtitles for old movies.
Yeah, it's funny. We have like an inside joke about the sound effects with subtitles. Where
mouth noises is one of my favorites.
Yeah. Was it our Silent Night who helps us with this the notes and stuff like that? He loves the word squelching. So every time like squelching pops up, it's always in the show notes. So like, yeah.
Oh, that's
Squelching's a good
awesome.
one.
Squelching is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, mouth noises is the one that always gets, or mouth clicking. Like anything that says mouth and then a noise just gets
Right.
me every time.
They're
Like,
very interesting. I mean, yeah.
oh man. Shout out to all the people doing dictation for subtitles and stuff on movies,
True.
though,
It's a lot of
because
work.
accessibility is important, and everyone should be able to enjoy all of the created media out there. So shout out to them making that possible for people.
I highly agree on that. And I always wanted to like tell like PR people all the time too, is like for screeners, there's usually never subtitles.
Oof,
And I was like,
that's
there's some
wild.
critics that could really like use, I mean, it's useful. But yeah,
Yeah.
screeners usually never have it. I'm like, ah, damn, that sucks.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the hard parts about like this show, right? Is we go on such crazy wild tangents and we talk, for long periods of time on subjects that are not easy to like calculate.
Right.
So, and we obviously we don't have enough money to pay somebody to go through and do real subtitles for it. So we have to rely on like Google's auto dictation if people want to watch it with subtitles, and I don't know how
Hmm.
that goes because I know no one can understand me when I talk. So but yeah, I mean, I love that there are like, Twitter, for example, there'll be a new trailer that drops for a movie or a game and it'll have subtitles built in,
Yeah,
and I love that stuff. Because yeah, like I said, everyone should be able to enjoy the things we enjoy, and um
I agree.
I think we all need to make a better and bigger effort to make all the cool stuff that's created more accessible to people.
I agree with that. Big believer in that.
All right. So our next community question comes from essentially Joe Mertens,
Mm.
or at J Mertens on Twitter. And he says or asks, what are the 3 greatest guilty pleasures you discovered during the pandemic?
Guilty pleasures.
Pleasures specifically.
Um, that's one thing I've always learned. You shouldn't feel guilty about anything that you enjoy.
About pleasures.
Right.
Nice.
Um, okay, actually, I'm just kidding. I hate how accessible things are to us sometimes. Um, I don't go grocery shopping anymore. I think
Oh
one of
my
the biggest
god, dude.
guilty pleasures is just doing delivery service for groceries.
Not
Uh, yeah, go for
sorry.
it. No,
I
yeah,
was gonna
yeah,
say not only that, but I actually went shopping the other day and I was having trouble finding something. And this
yeah.
guy running down the aisle was like, "Hey, buddy, you having trouble looking for something?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm trying to find whatever. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head." And he was like, "Oh man, that's just right down this aisle. Hey man, if you ever need anything, I'm running groceries, buddy. Man, just call me up on the like app, and I'll just be there. Instacart, DoorDash, I don't care, whatever it is, I'll do it for you."
Oh my god.
I'm like, "Cool, bro. Have a good day. Thank you for the note."
Right.
But like,
It's
it's wild.
it got me in the bad habit of like, oh, I could pay like in the fees like $7. I'm like, I could pay $7 for someone to look for all my food, grab my food, drive it to me, and just lay it on my like porch. That's amazing. I hate that how easy that is. I'm like, I will easily pay $7 for someone to like find things for me. It's like, especially with like gas prices now, it's like it's a gallon of gas away. That's $7 right there. They're spending their gas money, not me. And I hate that I'm so reliant on it. I'm guilty of it. Like that's a very bougie thing to do. And it's like, but like I haven't been inside a grocery store in probably over a year, which is mind blowing. It's like that used to be like a part of my daily life. Like, all right, maybe once a week, every 2 weeks, go grocery shopping. But now I just like go on an app and be like, this is all the stuff I need. Here's the substitutions.
No, and
Okay, I'll see you in 2 hours.
it's so true. So, when food apps started to really become a thing, like
Right.
Grubhub, DoorDash, etc., um, I would listen to people like use those apps and talk about it. And I was like, it's like, oh, I got ordered this thing on Grubhub, and like they didn't deliver this one thing. And I, like you said, it was like this like bougie thing of like, well, why don't you just go get your food yourself? And
Right.
then of course the pandemic happened and we all kind of fell into that oh, I don't want to go outside. I can't go outside. It's not an essential thing, but I need to eat. And so, we started using these services, and now it's hard to break that habit. It's hard to the whole reason we started recording late today is I went to go grab lunch, but my first instinct wasn't to go grab lunch, right? It was to order lunch.
Right.
We finished off our lunch meet. We need to go shopping, so I didn't know what to do for an early lunch. And so I was like, asked my wife what she wanted, and she said this, and I was like, okay. Well, do we want to DoorDash it, or should I go grab it? And we both were like, well, we should probably just go grab it. And so I went and got it. But that wasn't the first instinct. The first instinct wasn't just, oh, let's go get food real quick. It
Right.
was
The
oh
convenience.
man, should we DoorDash?
It's crazy because I use this even at work where before I go on my lunch break, I will go on DoorDash for like pickup, and I'll still order through the app. So when I'm on my lunch, it's already ready, and I go pick it up. It's
Okay.
just like a weird system now. It's like, why am I so reliant on it? And I feel guilty about it. It's like that was never a thing. It's like for lunch, you go out to lunch. But
I gotta say though, pickup ordering, not that bad. I love not having to, force people to deal with other people, because
that's fair.
there are a lot of people that have like uh phone anxiety, where they just get this really bad anxiety when they're supposed to call someone or do something.
Mm-hmm.
And so to give them the ability to utilize an app to go order their food and then go pick it up without with minimal interactivity, that's great for those people.
That's
um
true.
so I don't feel so bad about that stuff. I think that's great. It's also a great convenience if you don't have time to call in, like you called twice and it's been busy both times, so you're like, okay, I'll just do it on the app and then I'll pick it up on my way home or whatever. So I think that at least has its advantages. And that's not to
Mm-hmm.
say food ordering apps and stuff aren't a necessity, because it's providing jobs, and it's great that people are willing to provide this service for people, and it's made people living at home who don't have as much mobility like get to have their favorite foods without trying to find some extenuating circumstance where they can have it, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
um but at the same time, like, yeah, it is, as a fully capable person, um it's like sometimes I agree with you. I feel bad sometimes using those apps as reliantly as I do now.
Right. So I guess that's my number one guilty pleasure. I don't know if I have two others. Yeah, I guess maybe more reliant on streaming services too. It's all like service based, I think. I've been very like reliant on like cool, I can get majority of my like viewing pleasure platforms with like HBO Max, Hulu, Amazon, Paramount Plus. I literally have all of them. And I feel guilty for having all of them too because like the whole thing was like to replace cable, right? And at the same time now we're paying about the same price. We just have multiple apps. So I feel a little guilty about that, but at the same time, I love my movies and I gotta have access to all of them.
we're
Um,
gonna we're gonna hit a weird impasse though, where these companies need to make licensing deals with other companies, because
right.
like Stars is a great example, right? Like Stars has
Mm-hmm.
some decent content, but I feel like it's not as widely known as a platform, especially as a platform you need to pay for.
Right.
um so there's stuff like that where like not every single network needs its own streaming service. That's why HBO Max is so great, right? Before HBO Max, you had HBO whatever. There was like two different
HBO Go.
HBO. Yeah,
Yeah.
HBO Go, but then there was the other one
HBO
too.
Now.
Now, that was it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you had the DC app, you had the CW app,
Uh,
you had
DC
um
Universe. Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, that's what it was called, DC Universe. And then you had like one other or two other apps that were all like the that comprised all of like the Warner Brothers HBO thing. So when
Mm-hmm.
they announced HBO Max and it was like this idea of everything all in one place, I thought it was perfect. And as I think we said before the show, like even now, even with all the complications and everything,
Mhm.
HBO Max is still one of the best streaming platforms out there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I have to agree with that. Um, and hopefully they keep doing good things, not worse things, but can't win them all.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I don't know if I have a third guilty pleasure. I feel like it's all like service based. I think
Okay.
it's just being quote unquote more lazy because of technology, the convenience of
Absolutely.
doing that.
Not a
Yeah.
bad thing. Not a bad thing, especially if you can afford it, you know? Um,
Yeah.
don't feel guilty.
A little bit.
Okay, maybe a little bit. So
I give it good tips.
on the topic of services, what would you say if you could only choose 3 streaming services? What would they
Mm.
be?
As of right now, HBO Max is number one. I think Amazon is a big one
Ooh,
for
that's a good
me.
pull.
Just mostly because it has a lot of the shows that I like to watch too, like The Boys. It's a big show for me. And was it Invincible? I love that show too. And they have a good, yeah, they have a good sort of like horror films too. And I gotta say, maybe Hulu. I think Hulu is the one that's going to be the big underdog. That's going to be more popular the more it like puts out these big movies. Like Prey was a big one where it got a lot of love, and now they're about to release Hellraiser, like we talked about. They're taking risk on like bigger budget projects, which like Netflix used to do. Or I mean, they still do, but I feel like Netflix puts in a lot of projects just to put in projects, and that really doesn't put out really great content. I think the only one they really have is Stranger Things, which I still really enjoy. I loved the last season, very horror esque as well. But I feel like Netflix was in my top three, but it kind of fell off. So I'm gonna have to replace it with Hulu. So yeah, Hulu, Amazon, and HBO Max.
Yeah, I think as Netflix has had services pull out because they made their
Hmm.
own streaming services or deals went away, and stuff like that, they've had to rely a lot heavier on their created content.
Right.
And I'm going to be honest, they seem to throw a bunch of stuff against a wall in
Right. To see
those
what
early
sticks.
years because they had that overhead to not
Hmm.
have to worry about it. But as that content dried up and you see like the caliber of things happening on Netflix, obviously there's the outliers like Stranger Things and
Right.
Mike Flanagan and
Right. Right.
um
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Hmm.
and stuff like that. There's definitely stuff on the platform that's incredible, but there's other stuff on there that you're like, how did this even get made?
Right.
So
And
it's interesting.
yeah, it's one of those things where now you kind of put it in perspective. It's like all of the Mike Flanagan stuff is on there. That kind of bumps it up.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, literally
Especially Midnight
even
Mass.
oh my god, Midnight Mass is an absolute masterpiece.
Yeah. And they heavily rely on Stranger Things. I feel like they put all of their eggs in the same basket for that one.
Mhm.
Um, I hear really good things about the Dahmer series, but at the same time, I don't really want to watch that.
Dude, I'm 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 conflicted when it
Right,
comes to this kind of serial killer true crime era. I was that kid that bought like serial killer books and read about like um Ed Gein and all those different psychos because I was just so
right,
fascinated with like what makes a person like this? What makes a person go to these lengths um to do the things they do? And it
hmm,
fascinated me as a kid, well, not a kid, but like a young teen. And so I would read these books, but now it's like you've got all these crazy like in-depth documentaries and shows and all because obviously other people had a similar fascination when they were younger and they're all growing up
right,
now making content. Um but there are certain levels of this stuff, right? That it's like how much is too much and how much of making the people that actually lived through this stuff relive these traumas, how
right.
worth it is that to make money?
Yeah,
Um,
it's a very thin line.
so like the Dahmer stuff is really interesting because I saw a comparison that was like, hey, uh, I'm the woman from this clip that you're showing and comparing the real event to the event in your upcoming show. And I'd appreciate not reliving this trauma every few months as you reiterate the Dahmer story 4 different ways. And
Right.
that really started to make me think about the fact that, it is insensitive to those people that had to actually live through those things.
Right. And
And
then
go ahead.
it's weird because the internet being the internet, we live in a way of like meme culture, different type of jokes and stuff like that too. And one tweet really stuck out to me. It's like anyone who makes Dahmer jokes, it's not funny. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. Sometimes we become desensitized that these are true stories that actually happen to people rather than a show that's very interesting and scary and intriguing
Right.
and thriller-esque, where like some people will be like, oh, and I've seen a bunch of memes about the TV show and stuff like that, where like he would bring someone in and show them like a bad movie, and if you say you hate that movie, he's gonna kill you, like dumb stuff like that. And I'm just like, yeah, that was actually a victim that like passed away.
Right.
And it was just like,
Yeah,
damn,
it's
like
so interesting. And like saying something is based on true events or inspired by a true story, like
right.
that's different because generally you're not drawing direct, comparisons to those things. Like Silence of the Lambs is a great example,
Hmm.
right? Where they took the main character or the main kind of serial killer villain from a bunch of different serial killers. So, yes, there are things inspired by true life events in there, but none of them are projected or presented in such a way that shows any of those people or
Hmm.
anything.
Yeah, it's a very like I said, a thin line between entertainment and what you can really like talk about subject wise.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's why
There's
like it
a
doesn't interest me too much. But like Mindhunters, where like it kind of like dives into it a little bit, that's kind of cool, I guess. But
Well, that's interesting too because
yeah,
that's like they specifically are like interviewing the serial killers
right,
themselves. But yeah, I mean, again, you fall into the same kind of category in certain respects. But Mindhunters is also really well done.
right. It's more on
And
the psychological aspect, like kind of what you
right,
were talking about. It's like what pushes someone to do this thing
yeah,
rather than
exactly,
the actions they did. So yeah,
yeah, 100%.
yeah.
Also a Netflix original, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, Netflix got
there's
some good
there's some
stuff.
stuff on there. There's
Hit or
some stuff
miss.
on there.
And they also made
Uh,
that 6 movie deal with Adam Sandler, which is not great.
but yeah, I think one of the things that really made me think about that was the documentary about the Golden State or the Gold what was it? The
Golden
Golden
State
State
Killer.
Strangler or Killer, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was the one that Patton Oswalt's wife was like researching. She was like a true crime writer, and
Huh.
she had been tracking this story about like the Golden State Killer Strangler forever. And she was actually the integral point that got them to actually catch him almost
Huh.
30 years later, 30, 40 years later or whatever. Because she was just digging and asking all these questions, and then she found this thing on eBay with some other internet sleuths and stuff. Um, and that's I think the first thing that really made me think like, wow, this is like these things affect the real world. Like
Oh yeah.
it's
It
not
reminds me of
just
the documentary Don't Fuck with Cats
oh
or something
sure.
like
I
that.
Somebody told me not to
Yeah.
watch that,
It's
so
not, yeah, they show a little too much. It's the same time as like it brings like the whole internet together. It's like how could someone do something like this? And they start investigating, they find out who it was, and they
Mhm.
capture the guys and stuff like that too. Um but yeah, no, it's very interesting where like documentaries and this kind of topics kind of like bleed into the real world. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Gage, did you have any questions for our wonderful handsome guest?
No, basically covered everything I was interested in, so
Okay.
I'm all good.
Nice.
I have a couple other questions to kind of close out and finish out the show, but we definitely don't want to keep you here all day. As much as it is fun to talk to you.
I'm always down.
Appreciate it. We're definitely gonna have you back 100%.
Odd.
As long as you're willing.
Oh, hell yeah.
So if you could make a film in any medium or tell a story in any medium, not just a movie, but that's not live action. So animated, 3D animated, stop motion, a video game, an audio story, something of that nature. What would it be?
Oh man, I would hate it and also love it at the same time because I know how much work goes into it. But stop motion would be incredible. I give major kudos to the people who do stop motion animation because obviously it takes a very very long time. One of my favorite films is Isle of Dogs, and every time I see like a small behind the scenes clip of them just like cutting up sushi and stuff like that, and it just takes them forever to have like 10 seconds, blows my mind. And I'm very curious on to see Guillermo del Toro's version of Pinocchio with that stop motion action as well.
Now,
Um,
is that film stop motion or is that CG to look like stop motion?
That's a good call. I think it's no, because on Twitter he's very vocal about stop motion, so I'm
Sure.
pretty sure it's stop motion.
I saw the trailer
Unless
for it the other
I don't
day,
know.
and someone said that this looks like, because I thought it was stop motion as well, but somebody said it looks like CG made to be stop motion, and I was like,
I said
huh,
that.
was it you?
Yeah.
Oh, is it true?
That's
I
awesome.
don't know. I was just trying to look on the internet right now to see if it is actual stop motion. But I mean, I could see that too if he just animated to make it look like that, just like to give a homage to it. Um, I love the art style of like Coraline as well. Like I just like that
Yeah,
type of like
absolutely.
look and feel and like colors and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, it would probably be like within the horror genre maybe too. But yeah, I would love to do like stop motion
That's awesome.
for like it's a cool look, like Kubo and two strings type of thing. Yeah,
Heck yeah.
it'd be extremely hard to do though. That's why I would
Oh
hate it,
yeah,
but then love it.
it's absolutely one of the most incredible mediums in existence, but yeah, there's no easy way to go about it. It's one of the things that I find um so interesting whenever a movie like that gets made, because
Right,
how long did they keep that under wraps or silent
right,
before,
years in the
yeah,
works.
before the first images come out or the first like trailer comes out? Like how many wonderfully talented people have been spending a ton of time like making this film for everyone to enjoy, and then you know everyone sees it in its hour and a half glory and then it's over.
Hmm.
It's so crazy.
And all the hard work, you're just hoping people will receive it well and stuff like that too as well. I always tell people it's like it is a miracle for a movie to be made, any type of movie, getting
Oh,
all the right hands
absolutely.
together, getting everything put out, being distributed, and like it's crazy. So that's why I always try to keep a positive mindset when I talk about movies, even if I don't like it. I know someone's going to appreciate it. There's always going to be a movie for someone, and that's the thing I'd love to celebrate. It's like your movie being made already is a huge accomplishment.
Well,
So I
and
give kudos to that.
going back to Batgirl real quick, like Batgirl shows you that you
Hmm.
can do everything right. How you can have the movie done and completed and still the world doesn't get to see it.
And that's heartbreaking because you know so much hard work was put into that movie.
100%.
I
It's
know
like,
maybe even thousands of people who worked on that film. That's
and
crazy to think about.
the worst part is like we don't know the whole story, right? We don't know what exactly went on, but I always wonder in the back of my mind, like it said that it got super low test audience scores, but were these
Right.
like were these girls and women that were like ages 10 to 16 to maybe early 20s, or was this a bunch of old white dudes that
Right.
watched the film? Like how do you know your test audience was the target demographic for this movie?
Yeah.
Um,
It was
so
worth putting out regardless, no matter what. Even
yeah,
if
100%.
yeah, somebody would have
Um,
enjoyed it.
it just blows my mind, like how you can do everything right, and you know, uh, we haven't had him on the show yet. We're gonna get him eventually, but Gary Whitta is, big fan of Gary Whitta,
Mhm.
Rogue One and Book
Mm.
of Eli and a bunch of stuff out there. He's had multiple projects that have gone under. Mouse Guard, for example, fell through when first I'll preface this by saying Mouse Guard is a beautiful comic book. You should check it out. It's about these little mice that are like knights and warriors, and they're
Mhm.
living in what it would be like to live in our world in medieval times, but like without humans, at least as far as I know. I don't know if there are humans in there. But it's like Rescue Rangers or something like that, but a
Right.
medieval kind of story. And it's just a beautiful story. They've got these great characters. There's so much great lore that the writer built into it. And Gary Whitta was working on the movie adaptation, and they had like some previs test footage that they had already made, and
Nice.
everything, and it fell through in the Fox Disney merger.
Mm.
So it died. And we could have had an incredible, like, different kind of movie out there in the world, and it fell through. And he's had multiple projects that had things like that happen to them, or things that he's had uh done, writing iterations on, or something that haven't seen the light of day yet, that he's been working on for years. And I think that's just so hard for creators and writers to um do all
Possibly
this
have that
stuff
happen.
and then have that
Yeah.
happen to them. Yeah, I mean, like, thankfully at the very least they're hopefully getting paid for that stuff.
Right.
um and then, if it falls through, it's like, at least I got something out of it. But when you put that much of your heart into something, like, I can't imagine how crushing it can be to have it
And I think that's
fall
like
through.
the what makes the Batgirl story so sad is that they really wanted it to be very impactful for like young women and stuff like that. Um, her being a person of color as well. It had a lot of things where a lot of people would have connected to it in a very emotional way. And
Yeah,
then having that stripped down and just saying like it's not going to come out at all. Not even you
ever.
have a streaming service. Throw it on there. See what happens.
Yeah,
If anything, you're gonna gain more subscribers because there's gonna be a Batgirl fan person that's like, "Oh, I grew up on the comics." That's one subscriber. That's still one more person. They would have made their money back for sure. I think. I don't know if that would have been realistic, but it's something where it's like it was already made, and they put
yeah.
their hard work into it, and it's just like
Well, what's
it's
crazy
crazy.
too is they built themselves like the perfect hero story, right?
Right.
Where they're like, "Oh, we're canceling it. We're gonna do it as a tax write-off. Like, no one's ever gonna see this movie." And then what if they had flipped that switch? I mean, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people have seen that story. I've heard about Batgirl
Right.
that never didn't even know it was in production at this point. So, you could have like done little to no marketing for it at that point, because it was already in everybody's mind.
Right.
And
Even
then
the
and
people
then
who
put
didn't
it
want to
out.
see it wanted
Right.
to see it
Would it
now.
would have
Yeah.
yeah, would have seen it just to see how bad or good or whatever else it was going to be.
Yeah.
And it's only sunshine and rainbows had they released that movie, you
Even
know?
it could have been one of those movies like it's so bad, it's so good.
Right,
Who
right.
knows?
Who knows?
It,
And
it could be just
we'll
like that little
unfortunately never know.
nostalgic feeling, but yeah. I always get so sad when I hear about a project and then years later it gets like shelved. And I'm just like,
Right.
no. For a big one for me was BioShock, a
Oh,
BioShock
sure.
movie. And then they were talking about the budget. The budget was too high, and then now there's talks of it actually going through, and it's greenlit now again. And I'm just like, don't play with my heart.
I mean,
If you shelve this one, I'm gonna be so mad.
look at
But we'll
look
see.
at Robert Eggers' Nosferatu.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
we heard
being
it. Yeah, we heard about
yeah
Nosferatu after Lighthouse, and then it fell through, and he ended up making The Northman, and
right.
then there were talks about it happening again, and then it fell through, and then like just yesterday they announced that it's back on again through Focus
It's
Entertainment this time, and it's like,
it's like a lot of back and forth, and then now we lost Anna Taylor Joy. It's not going to be in the cast anymore because of scheduling issues.
right,
But then we got the other Skarsgård that's going to be the lead in it as Nosferatu. And I was like, all right. I mean, as long as they're working on it, I'd be happy to see it for sure because I think he's a really interesting director.
yeah.
Um, I'm not a huge fan like a lot of the fan people are, but he's really great behind the camera.
I still need to watch The Witch. I still need to watch that movie, but I watched The Lighthouse and I watched The Northman, and they are
Right.
very interesting and unique films in their own
Very
right.
unique. Oh yeah. He definitely
A-
has a weird vision.
and I think that depending on how he decides to pen the script for Nosferatu, his style of filmmaking, his kind of slow, methodical way of doing stuff, could work really well for a Nosferatu story.
Well, I think
Um,
so too.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm like a huge vampire nerd. I absolutely love vampire movies. It doesn't matter how good or bad they are. Like I'm not um surprisingly I'm not like all into like Vampire Diaries or stuff like that, but
Right.
um you know, like I love Day Shift. Day Shift is a good example of just a
Mm.
fun, ridiculous movie. I liked the weird kind of lore they built around the vampires and the whole idea of like hunting for their fangs and making money and stuff. I thought that was a fun thing. It reminded me of almost like a 90s uh kind of horror action film made today.
Yeah.
Just like a
Totally.
cheesy, kind of campy uh film that was just made for fun.
Yes. And those movies are totally needed. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love those type of movies. I love the campiness of some movies too. I think it goes a long way. A director that I really love and I look up to, Alfonso Cuarón. I think
What have they done?
Alfonso Cuarón has done like Gravity, Children of
Oh, okay.
Men, Roma.
God, Children of Men, man. Oof.
That's like one of my favorite
That's
movies.
so intense.
Yes. He also did Prisoner of Azkaban for Harry Potter, and that's my favorite Harry Potter too, because I was like, oh, this is like a horror film. You have your werewolves in there as well. It's a werewolf movie in a way. Um, no, I love it. It's so good. I just love that he does those one continuous long shots. I think that's very creative. Where I think even in Gravity, the first scene is a 13-minute long cut. And it's like,
God, that's
damn,
crazy.
how do you even do that? Like, that's incredible. Like, that type of filmmaking always blows my mind.
It's also interesting to see like, you know, like what was the 1917, how
Oh,
that
yeah.
movie is portrayed as a single cut, but
Right.
technically it's not. They've got a bunch of like hidden cuts
Hidden
blended
cuts.
in.
Oh, yeah. It's
Um
super well done.
super cool to see like and that's one of those things where, you know, a lot of people say CG ruins movies, but there's so much CG in movies that you don't even notice at this point in
Right.
movies. Like they used complete CG body doubles for some of those cuts to link the two shots together, and you'd
That's
never be
crazy.
able to tell. You'd never be able to tell.
Yeah, see, this
Um,
is why I love filmmaking. And it blows my mind how creative people can be in like creating these shots and these like weird angles and like storytelling and the acting. Yeah, no, that's why I love movies. It's an art form, and it really shows for me. Like every time I like see something like that, it just makes me smile. And it's like one day I want to do that, and I'm never ever gonna be near as good as that, but I will want to attempt and try for sure.
I just hope that we start to appreciate our visual effects houses more.
Yes,
I hope we start respecting their time more. I hope we start paying them what they deserve.
absolutely.
Because I mean, there's
They're
a
in
lot
super
of
high
stuff
demand.
at this point where, you know, people make the jokes about Marvel movies where they say, "Oh wow, this is such a great shot," quote unquote, and then they put like the character in the background as like a blue screen, right?
Hmm.
Because they're making a joke about how the landscape is all CG, and uh, I I hate it because it's still someone had to direct that shot. Someone still had to
Right,
make that landscape. Someone still had to color it, you know, render it and make it
right.
look good enough to show you in a movie. So it's still a shot. Someone is still taking a camera and forming that shot for the sequence. And it's what makes movies like Pacific Rim so good, right?
Right.
In that
Great
movie, it's
movie.
yeah. But if you notice, even in the CG sequences of that film, it always feels like it's being shot by a camera and not by like just a floating thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, And when you have people that work that hard on those little details to make those things feel that way, and you really have to have a director that knows that. And I think Guillermo del Toro is wonderful for that. I mean, when we weren't sure if we were getting a BioShock movie anymore, and I saw Shape of Water, I was like, this is it. This is a BioShock movie. Like that, the intro to that movie is BioShock. You
That's
know,
fair.
put Atlas's voiceover in there, and you
Yeah.
have the introduction to what's the place called? I'm like spacing the name.
Rapture.
Rapture. Thank you. I was like, it starts
Yeah,
with an
yeah.
R. But yeah, so you have like the intro to Rapture right there.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, it's incredible when you get the right people together, but they absolutely need time to develop that stuff and make it look good. And
Yeah, and that's the beauty about filmmaking. It's a community project. It takes a whole entire village to make a movie. Like every single
absolutely.
person has a role into what makes that movie come to life, and that's the editor, the cinematographer, to like sound design, even like people who like make sounds. I forget what it's called, but like they like, will like smash on snow to like
Yeah.
replicate the character like walking in snow and stuff like that. It's like so much
Or
work and detail go into making a movie.
my
It's
favorite
so
is
cool.
when they're doing a scene like, what are those called? Gage, can you look that up real quick? Um thank you. When you're watching a sequence for like you were saying, snow, and then you see the
Mhm.
sound guys, and they are like walking on something completely different, like
Right,
metal beads or something, but it
right.
sounds perfect. I always
Or
loved
like
that too.
I was what's it
Oh,
the person who made the sound design for the T-Rex roaring is like
oh
5 different
yeah,
animals mixed into one or something like that. It's crazy.
yeah, absolutely. What do you got, Gage?
Foley artists.
Foley
Yes,
artists. Yeah, shout out to the Foley artists out there.
dude, even for little things like a commercial, for example, it's like all those little beats where someone's
Yeah,
zipping up a jacket, or like a bottle cap falls on the floor. Like those Foley artists, thank you, Gage, are doing all that
incredible.
stuff.
Yeah, and this goes
And
for like game design as well, or like
yeah.
cartoons. Like they do all the sound stuff, and they're amazing. There's some like cool TikToks that show like them watching the movie and then they're replicating all the different sounds. There's a Ratatouille one about all the kitchen noises and they're like banging all the pots and stuff like that. And it's just like,
Oh, that's
damn,
awesome.
this is talent and it's incredible.
I
And then you have to
remember
get, uh, yeah,
I remember there's a little thing in Shaun of the Dead where um it's the sequence when they're in the backyard, and they've got the old school like wind up camera,
oh yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
when they were showing the film, nobody laughed at that moment because there was no sound. But oh, did we lose Freddy again?
No, I hope not.
Okay. Your image is slightly frozen, but you're still
Okay,
talking. I think you're coming back.
okay, sweet.
Um but they added the wind up sound to the camera, and then everybody laughed. So it just goes to show how important those little things are.
Right, sound design goes a long way. Some horror films aren't scary unless if it wasn't for the score or the sound design. And that's
Absolutely.
something that's, like, huge.
I
That
have
plays a
a
big part.
I have a question for both of
Yeah.
you. Um so I have oh no, Freddy!
No, I'm
Freddy!
here.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
here.
Your camera just keeps freezing. Um, so there's this big thing I have with Christopher Nolan, especially in
Mm,
Dunkirk, where I feel like his score overpowers the movie. Like to the point
yeah.
where it's building, 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 but then there's like, where is the payoff for all of this building? So my question is, do you prefer a movie with like a subtle score, or like an impactful score, or complete silence where it's
Mm,
just the sound effects, or of course like a mixture of both, obviously, but I want to go without the mixture just because that's like the one,
right.
right?
I mean, I'm all about powerful scores. I'm a big Hans Zimmer fan, and he's pretty over the top with his stuff. But at the same time, it doesn't overpower the scene or the acting or the movies. I feel like it can, and that's where it's like a director's problem, where it's like you're allowing this to overpower what's going on screen, where there has to be a lot of communication between everyone. I'm a big fan also of like Danny Elfman, which is a very particular type of sound, but at the same time, it's more subtle and more quiet, where Hans Zimmer is a lot louder and stuff like that. Or a score can also tell a lot about the emotion, where like in Joker, the bathroom scene, the score in that is perfect, where you're
Sure.
seeing a visual representation of what he's listening to in his own mind, and us, the viewer, just watching a random crazy guy in the bathroom dancing. Where a score matters. I think a score matters a lot. That's why I want to say I'd rather have a bigger score than a less of a score.
I
I'll
also
lean
like
towards that way a little bit more. It has to be a mix though, for sure.
a couple more to throw out there. John Carpenter, obviously.
Oh yeah.
And then one that I really like, it's less of a like a technical score and more of the way he uses music. But
Hmm.
uh, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino.
Hmm.
There's a sequence in that movie where I think it's Brad Pitt's character is driving down the road, and every single time the movie cuts, it's playing a different song, and it's playing the song in a
Hmm.
different place, and it's this really interesting way to show passage of time because
Right.
obviously in a lot of movies what happens is you're going from California to Texas and there's like a single song playing through the sequence, and when they pull up to Texas that song ends and they turn off the car and it cuts, right? um
Right.
which is not realistic, but it works great in movies. But what I like about this is that it took a more realistic approach to that, where the passage of time was shown through these different songs. So like every time he was making a turn and it would cut to him driving down a different road, it was a different song showing the passage of time as he was driving until he pulled up to where he was at and the final song was playing and he turned the vehicle off. I just think it's really interesting, and I'd never seen it done, at least not the where I consciously registered it like I did in that movie.
Right. There's a lot of scores that drive a movie like that. And I think talk about Christopher Nolan, Interstellar, when they're on that planet where like time is passing by super fast. They intentionally had like that ticking sound in the soundtrack
Mm-hmm.
where each tick was like a year time or something like that. I forgot what it was, but the small details of that, like, damn, that's crazy. But at the same time, it's also a score of like, it sounds like a clock is ticking down and they don't have enough time. So it creates that suspense as well. And like I brought up with Drive, Drive is very driven by its score as well. I think the score really elevates the movie a lot and it gives you that emotional feels of what those people or those characters are going through, and the disconnection about being like he's wanting to be a good guy, he's gonna do all he can to be a good guy, but at the same time he's still him, he's still that character, he's still Driver. And I love that he doesn't even have a name, he's just known as Driver even in the credits, which is great. I was like, that's awesome because that's who he is. But no, yeah, I love the scores. I love scores. Actually, every vinyl I buy, and I even said I don't have a vinyl player. It's all soundtracks. I don't buy any like vinyls of like movie or music bands or anything like that. It's all soundtracks.
Same here. You can
All
kind
right.
of see them blurred out here. I have like
Yeah.
maybe like 20. I think there's like 4 of them that are like actual. I've got like a couple Linkin Park vinyls I haven't opened just because I grew up with them.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's like The Last of Us, Metal Gear, Days Gone,
Mm-hmm.
Guardians of the Galaxy, all that stuff. It's great.
Yeah.
But what about your opinion
Scores.
on scores, Gage?
Um, I'm kind of in the same boat where I think a score is more beneficial than not having a prominent score, because like
Mm-hmm.
it adds so much. Like if you just have a movie that's like, oh, you have some accompanying music that's like very subtle and it's just kind of there to fill the silence, it doesn't add anything. Or if you have things where it's just there's no score at all and it's just like, oh, there's 2 people talking for 15 minutes, but there's nothing but dialogue. Depending on the tone of the scene, it wouldn't really work as well. Like if you look at something like I mean, you can look at the big ones, obviously, Christopher Nolan's films, or you can look at like the Star Wars films, Lord of the Rings, all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So many of those scenes would not hit the way they do if they did not have that music. Like Anakin and Obi-Wan having their final, showdown at the end of Episode 3
Well, I mean,
is
Duel of Fates,
awesome.
right?
Yeah, Duel of the Fates, great scene. You got
Mm-hmm.
introducing Darth Maul with a freaking double-bladed lightsaber is awesome. But that song is so good, and the fact that they reuse it in Episode 2 as Anakin is on his speeder bike going towards the Tusken Raider camp, it's just him on a bike just traveling. But because they're playing that piece, oh, it's so just intense, and you're just like, you're full of like this anxiety of like, oh my god, what's he gonna do? He's losing it. He's about to go just slaughter all these people. It's gonna be insane. It's very, very important. I mean, I'm trying to think of something that doesn't really have a score to compare it to, but I can't think of anything because I feel like most things do. But yeah, I prefer having a more prominent score with like specific pieces of music that, I can add to a playlist afterwards and just
Mm-hmm.
enjoy. I mean, I guess Drive is a good example because Drive has like 4 or 5 really good songs that I'll just listen to whenever, but there's also plenty of music in the score that it fits when it's during the scene, but it's kind of just there. It's not necessarily something that I'm
Right.
going to want to listen to actively aside from watching the movie. So yeah, I definitely like having very specific pieces, but prominent ones of that.
That's awesome. It's always a question on my mind because I am a huge fan of what, especially like a score or classical music, can kind of imbue just from listening to it, not even being accompanied by visuals. Like for example, I was listening to a song from a game developer that I follow. He's working on an indie game called Fist of the Forgotten, and he um posted this piece of music that he was like, I was trying to make something for this sequence in the game, and I don't know if I really like, feel it. I'm just gonna leave it here for you guys to listen to. And I was listening to it and I was like, wow, this reminds me of like a someone who's sitting on like a cliffside over like overlooking a sunset, while sitting on a rock or something like that. Something very specific. And they were like, "Were you watching me while I was making this?" Because that's exactly the like what I was working on at the time. And I was like, "No, I missed that stream." It was just what the music like gave to me.
Actually, I did kind of come up with an example, and it's the same franchise but 2 different movies.
Oh, okay.
I
Hmm.
love Tron. I've seen Tron multiple
Oh,
times. I cannot remember any music or anything from that first film. But if you mention
fair enough.
Tron Legacy, that Daft Punk soundtrack,
Amazing score.
just, it's like, uh, that movie's great on its own, but when that theme hits in the beginning, it's like, this is it. I'm watching a perfect movie right now because of that
Yeah.
music.
Tron Legacy doesn't get that much love, and I love hearing when people love the movie because I love that movie as well. I think it looks aesthetically really pleasing. But yeah, the score is what really makes this movie. The storyline is not groundbreaking. It's like, all right, cool, that was trapped. I'm there. Let's get out. Boom, easy. But at the same time, it's just the visuals and the score that goes with the visuals that really make this movie really groundbreaking and very exciting. I will always remember the opening scene with that score, with him riding the motorcycle, and we get like that POV shot of like the camera facing the helmet, and he like jumps off to the side. Like that scene blows my mind each time, and I get chills. Even like now, talking about it makes me happy to talk about it. It's cool. Like a score could really make a movie. Um, the only movie I could think of that doesn't really have a score that I brought up earlier is Host, and that's because it's usually just a Zoom call, and that's literally just people talking. But I think it benefits that movie because it makes it very real and realistic, so you don't care about the score. And at the same time, the runtime is only 1 hour as well. So you don't really need a score to really drive that movie. It's really just like the jump scares and the action sequences that really elevate that movie. So I guess some movies don't necessarily need it. I just
Yeah,
prefer it if it does have it.
I think that there's definitely a time and place for a movie not to have a score, especially if they're trying to kind of give you a different vibe. What is it that I think is it
Right.
they come at night? I feel like doesn't have much of a
Oh,
score.
yeah. Just
Um,
eerie quietness.
yeah, and it's for a very specific purpose in that movie.
Hmm.
So I mean, it definitely serves its purpose, but obviously it's the mixture of both that makes it the best that it can be. Moments that are quiet are quiet. Moments that need a score have a score. But I just it's just a fun question because sometimes you get some really unique
Yeah,
answers out of it. Um,
definitely.
so to wrap this up, is there anything you have coming up that you want to promote, or where can people find you, um, etc.?
I mean, right now we're in the middle of like the busiest time of year for Nightlight. So Nightlight, a horror movie podcast on Blade Discussing's podcast network. We're gonna try to have a lot of content this month. So we're gonna have our original show. And I guess Prince already talked about it, so I can announce that Prince interviewed Mike Flanagan, so we'll have that interview up sometime this month as well. I got a couple interviews coming up, so look out for that. Other than that, I don't have a release date for the short film yet, but we're in pre-production, so look out for that. I'm always on Twitter. I love Twitter, great community, and my @ is just @ Frederick Nuti. I just made it simple, just my name. Um, Instagram, it's more of my personal life and my crazy adventures with my friends @ Freddie Nuti. And oh yeah, choicecatmedia.com for any movie reviews that you guys want to look at.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Did you have anything else you wanted to say, Gage?
Uh,
Go watch Drive.
yes, I second that for sure.
All right. Is there anything else you want to say before we close out, Freddie?
Not just big thank you for having me. I love talking about movies and like horror stuff. So this always like makes my day and stuff like that too. And then look out for another Nightlight episode with you on it. So that's coming out soon too.
Heck yeah. So,
That'll be
on that
good.
note, I just want to tell you, you're pretty good, and you are out of our league.